We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AV Rant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. My name is Rob H, and this week I'm here with...
Lee Overstreet pinch hitting once again while Tom buys a house, I reckon. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, you know what? He told me like a month and a half ago that he was going to be away this week, so it wasn't necessarily to do with the house because they hadn't closed on the house back then when he told me about it, and I can't remember what he was away for, but he's away this week, and it was planned, and I forgot all about it, so that's on me. Because he definitely gave me a heads up. But, you know, I gave Lee more than like 5 minutes notice that we were going to record today. So, yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
I had it on my calendar. That might be the first time I ever typed it in to my calendar, like on Google Calendar.
Yeah, you had enough time to do that. So I will warn everybody in advance here. If you're wondering, hey, why aren't Rob and Lee like digging into CEDIA Expo 2025 coverage in this here particular episode? Well, we have a surprise for you. While Tom is away, the cats will play. And there's going to be a second episode this week where I'm going to be talking with Mr. Joe Klusnick, who attended CEDIA 2025 in person. And so, yeah, he's going to be joining me for a second episode. Both of these episodes are probably going to be like 2 hours long, so you got a whole lot of AV Rant coming at you this week. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of in-depth coverage. So we still have some news to go through that might get partially repeated when I talk to Joe on the second episode, or whatever order you're listening these episodes to. But yeah, there you go. That's the explanation.
What's great is if you use podcasts like I do to have something to listen to while doing chores or yard work or some other physical task, your house is going to be so clean and the yard's going to look perfect. Whatever right. You're going to get your car washed. You're going to get all kinds of things done.
Or maybe you increase the playback speed to 2 times this week, just to really stuff it all in there.
I don't know if anybody wants to hear me at double speed.
Some people have said
I'm already kind of grating.
I can't believe it. Well, speaking of grading, I'm doing the whole thing of, giving some world news headlines so that honestly, it was for my own edification, because I'm like, when I listen back to these episodes sometimes a few weeks later, I'm like, what the heck was going on in the world? And you know what? We got a little note from Karl this week who's like, I'm really not checking into the news, and I kind of appreciate getting like these very fast headlines at the top of AV Rant for whatever reason. This. So, if one person likes it, that's good enough for me. Plus, I like it. So,
and I'll talk about what's going on in my life. I like when I go back and listen to shows that I was on, I can go, oh yeah, that's right, that was happening.
We will definitely catch up with Lee, but just to do the world headlines really quick. So France, they ousted their prime minister in a no confidence vote. They have a president as well, so Macron is still in power, but their prime minister is out. The prime minister of Japan also stepping down because they have a whole system where it's like, the party that he represents, they got voted down, but then he's not he doesn't necessarily have to step down as PM, but he is anyway. Anyway, a couple of prime ministers.
Can we get some of that action here in America? Can we get a little bit of that? A little bit of that action would be nice here.
Definitely some political change. There was the whole thing with Hyundai and their plant in Georgia. It's like a battery production facility, which is like not fully up and running. So they're like setting up the production lines. And in order to do that, they had a bunch of South Korean workers who were here on temporary USA, temporary visas. But yeah, ICE went in there and like raided that entire production plant, and South Korea's government had to like strike a deal with the US government, and those people are all getting deported back to South Korea. So that seems like maybe that plant isn't going to be up and running when they said it was going to be, because it seems like a bit of a setback as far as that goes. Plus, like, all the training staff was South Korean, and they all got sent back too. So,
and I'm a huge EV enthusiast. I'd like us to make that transition as soon as possible. And it's kind of embarrassing how it's going in America right now.
I don't know how that
embarrassing
helps.
For many other reasons.
I don't know how that helps American jobs when the facility can't be up and running and the trainers are all gone. Yeah, you'd think.
Lots of jobs gone.
So,
great.
Of course, Israel and Palestine conflict continues on, seems to be escalating. Israel dropped like leaflets all throughout Gaza City saying like, hey, everybody who lives in Gaza City, you should all evacuate to the south, with no ability or provisions to do so, but you should all go. So that was horrible. And then 6 Israelis were killed at a bus stop in Jerusalem by 2 Palestinian gunmen who were also killed at the scene. So yeah, just a horrible conflict there. Russia and Ukraine's conflict is still escalating. So yeah, definitely no like ceasefire in sight, it seems like. Nope. And then, yeah, we had an appeals court in USA. They upheld the E. Jean Carroll verdict, the $83 million in damages that President Trump is supposed to pay her. Now, supposedly, isn't that a civil lawsuit, that one? Wasn't that a civil lawsuit?
It is. Technically, you don't say he was found guilty. You say he was found civilly liable.
Yeah, civilly liable.
But that means he did it.
Well,
just to be clear.
Found out, and this is an appeals court, so... Yeah. Doubly so, and yet I didn't think civil cases could be appealed to the Supreme Court, but they're talking about that because the defense that they're trying to mount is that because the Supreme Court said that anything that's an official presidential act, he's immune from. But I thought that was criminally immune. I didn't think that was civilly immune. And
it's not an official presidential act to sexually harass somebody,
especially before he was ever even running for president. Yeah. So that's.
But then again, this Supreme Court is looking for ways to help him. So we'll see what happens.
Seems like very, very strange goings on over there. But National Guard is supposedly going to get deployed to Chicago.
He seems to be backing off on that a little bit.
You would think, considering it's completely constitutionally illegal. But
that might be why.
There was more stuff in the Epstein file stuff going on. There's a birthday letter and a novelty check that was published with his. Yep. Yeah. So there you go.
Look, to be fair, Bill Clinton also wrote him a birthday note.
Sure.
So that's great. Tell us everything that everybody did with that man.
Everybody there, take them all down. I don't really know why the group of victims who have said that they could make and release their own list haven't already done so. Do it.
Just
please
say everything.
Yes.
Tell us everything. I want to know everything and everybody.
So anyway, okay, horrible stuff. There you go. That's the world. And then, getting to a little bit of tech news, but I'm going to put it in the world news headlines because Google escaped essentially all punishment for having been found to be monopolistic in the USA. It was the same judge who rendered the verdict, but essentially leveled no punishments other than they have to share some of their search data with small competitors that want to get into the search engine game. So that was about the only corrective thing that was done. But in the EU, they were issued a 2.95 billion euro fine. So that's something, 2.95 billion euro, not that big to Google, but it's a little bit of a slap on the wrist more than the USA did.
Fining me $150.
Sure.
Something like that. It's like a parking ticket,
That's right. So there we go. Hooray. We're caught up in the context of the world.
And kind of irritating, but important.
But let's get to more personal news. What's been going on with Lee Overstreet?
Hey, doing all right. Everybody gets sick of hearing about my car, but I had to get a new battery in my car. Do the whole thing, the big battery, not the 12-volt battery.
Now, is this your Tesla Model 3 or your Tesla Model whatever the other one is that you have? What's the second one?
This was the Tesla Model 3 from 2021.
Gotcha.
And one day it just popped up a message saying, you can no longer charge above 50% scheduled service. And I'm like, oh, well, that's...
Yowza.
Yeah. So, but... harmless. Took it up there. They gave me a loaner car, which happened to be a Cybertruck.
Okay.
So that was an interesting 2 days.
You've driven that now.
I have. And I have so many mixed feelings because obviously politically and socially and ethically, I'm one direction.
Right.
On the other hand, technically, that's kind of an amazing, fun vehicle.
Sure.
It's actually
seems it hasn't sold like gangbusters, which is probably why they had one available to be a loaner vehicle.
Yes, that is exactly why. And so it was the top end spec over $100,000 that I'm driving around. And honestly, it was pretty cool. I mean, and since we're on an AV related podcast, let me just tell you, the audio in that vehicle is fantastic. Easily the best factory stereo system I have ever heard. And I'm pretty picky, as you know. So it has a fantastic, because the dashboard is the size of a twin bed, it has amazing soundstage. The speakers on the dash sound fantastic. And it has 2 subwoofers, and it is good. They're real subwoofers. And the strength of them and the tuning of them is just amazing. So I did a lot of self-driving and air drumming while going down the highway.
Right.
You can play air guitar in a Tesla if it's driving itself, and you don't have to touch the steering wheel. So that's pretty cool. So that was kind of fun. And I kind of miss it. I got back in the Model 3 after they replace the battery. And it's what's funny is after all that, it's the same exact car. You don't notice any difference. So it's like nothing ever happened. And it's warranted for 8 years, so it's covered. Any farts? I got back in the Model 3 and started trying to tune the audio in that. Like, what's wrong with my bass? Where'd the bass? So it's the same thing. You get used to something in a home theater or in any situation, and you go back to the regular thing.
Yep.
I remember back in the day when I first started watching some high def TVs, and then you'd go watch a regular one, and it looked like you were looking through a porthole on a ship. Like, what is this big, deep glass thing that I'm looking at? So it was a little bit of that effect. So that was kind of fun and interesting. Anxiety levels down a little bit lately. That's kind of nice. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Came down a little bit. And then also the big thing in my life right now is I'm trying to address lingering projects. The room that I'm in always looks the same to you guys. And that's fine because it's just this curtain in the background and so forth. But this room has been, let's just say, hoarded up in the past. And even most recently, just stacks of things I've been meaning to get to and never quite putting new stuff where it goes, etc. So I wish I could flip the camera around and show it off. I'm so proud this office looks so much better. It like humans can come in here and I'm not embarrassed anymore. And there's a little stacky stack over here. I've got a couple little doodillies on the desk I got to put away. Like, here's some DVD-Rs that are going to go deep in a closet.
Okay.
Deep in a closet, just for fun in the future. Do you need any DVD plus RWs?
Can't say that I do at the moment.
No?
But yeah.
Could I interest you in some blank Blu-rays?
Too.
Yeah. So I'm just going to tuck those away in the closet for future fun. And then I will finally have all surfaces like a real adult in a real office studio. So I'm very proud of that. And then I'm doing the digital version of that. I have, God, it must be like a decade of temp folders. You ever have a temp folder and you've been meaning to get to it and put it where it goes? I have temp folders from the 2000s. So I'm finally putting them where they go. And it's just going to be whenever I get time, an hour here and there until I get this all put in the right order. Then we're doing big backups and then off to the races. I might actually accomplish something creative and digital in the near future. This has been weighing on me. I'm kind of proud of this situation. It's something that's hard to show off and explain. But anybody that's ever had a big mess of data with just folders all over the place and you never organized it, you'll understand. It's getting there though. But boy, it takes a while when you're looking through old stuff and you go, oh, look, 90s emails. Let's read them and think about the past. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of fun, kind of frustrating, but that's what's been going on in life.
Yeah, that's a good catch up with Lee. I can't really say there's been a ton going on my end of things, which I'm kind of thankful for. I'll take a little bit of quietness in my personal life. So
amen.
That's about it for that. So yeah, let's see. What are we going to do? Yeah, let's do what we watch. We normally do that next. So yeah, we haven't heard from Lee in a while. So what has Lee been watching since we talked to you last?
Well, this past week, do you call it binging a show if you watch it like one episode a day? Or do you have to watch
I'd still call that a binge. Yeah, because that's definitely still faster than how it released, unless it's one of those shows that it released all the episodes on the same day. So
I waited forever to watch the second season of Last of Us. And I think I waited because I enjoyed the first season so much. I mean, just fantastic in a million different ways. Laughed, cried, jumped scared.
Were you wonderful. Fan of the game at all, or was this just
I had never heard of the game.
Okay, there you go.
I didn't know anything, and that's what's so great. I could tell from promos, it's like, that looks kind of post-apocalyptic. That's my vibe. And so I just decided to start watching it. It's like, okay, it's got that guy from that, I'll just check it out, right? Harmlessly check it out. And holy cow, it was so good that first season. Second season, I don't want to mess it up for anybody that hasn't watched it and wants to, right? And I don't know how much you can give away anymore. How long do you wait before you talk about things?
Probably longer than this. Yeah, we won't go full spoilers here.
So I'm not going to do any spoilers. Second season, I'll just say I didn't love as much. I feel like they're, I don't know. It was good. Don't get me wrong. Good.
Okay.
But whereas the first season was A+, we're looking at A- on the second season.
Okay. That's still pretty good, but
possibly B+.
I mean, that goes very much hand in hand with how people reacted to the games. Because the second season of the TV show is essentially the first half of the second game, and the third season of the TV show is going to be like the second half of the second game. Okay. And whether they're actually going to wait for the third game in the series to be released before they start making the fourth season, I don't know. But so people's reaction to the second game was certainly split, to say the least. And then there were definitely events that people were gigantically not fans of, and then other people defended it. So I imagine it's not supremely different in the TV show.
That must be the case. I'll say some good things. It's still visually stunning. Okay. The effects are very well done, convincingly post-apocalyptic and overgrown and moody, and the. I mean, we all know there's sort of zombie-like creatures in it, right? That's not giving away anything.
No, I don't think that. That's pretty much the premise. So yeah.
Yes, that's the premise.
Although they're not straight-ahead zombies in this, but we won't give that away.
That's the fiction of the science fiction. And my favorite science fiction is always when you only ask me to accept one or two or three kind of impossible things. Yeah. And then everything else past that is what would happen if that one or two or three impossible things occurred. And boy, they did a great job with it. Like, it was
the
eerie.
Somewhat plausible setup. Yeah.
Yeah. And, oh God, it's just creepy. But the second season, I feel like they were trying to recapture some very serious magic moments in that first season. Like, let's do a second season equivalent of these things. And it just didn't quite have the same, emotional appeal for me. And just, I know it's a violent zombie-ish kind of sci-fi, but there were a couple of bits that was like, do we have to go there? Like,
okay.
Like, I don't need to be watching this at 1 o'clock in the morning and then go straight to bed. Like, I'm a human and this is going to run. This is going to play in my head.
They want to do some impact.
So I got to watch it during the day and then watch Puppies and Kittens later in the evening.
For sure.
And so, I don't know. But it's still beautiful, still amazing. It's still a cool show. And I'm probably going to watch the third season. But also, with my poor ADHD brain, will I know what's going on in the third season by the time it comes around in 2027 or something?
You watch a recap. That's how it's done these days.
Yeah, and then you got to go back and watch almost everything again. That's how I feel about it. But I'm glad I watched it. I didn't know what to expect. I don't know anything about the video game, and I don't watch previews. I hate previews. I want to be surprised at every moment. I'll watch a recap because, again, this brain doesn't remember what happened last night very well. But I just have a great time watching something that I know nothing about, and it turns out to be great.
It's always good to get the perspective of someone who is not a fan of the existing IP coming to it with fresh eyes, because you're gonna hear from people who are very much into the game, and you get their perspective, and I love hearing that too. So yeah, that's great.
So overall, fantastic. I wish I could go into more detail, but anything I talk about would ruin it for people who haven't seen it. So highly recommended.
Okay. So I guess it's my turn. I watched a movie this week, which was Suspiria, the 2018 remake version. So there was the Dario Argento original back in 1977. This is a 2018 remake. This is starring Dakota Johnson and Tilda Swinton and Mia Goth. And the overall story of Suspiria, sort of echoing the same basic plot premise of there is this young, really quite naive, inexperienced American girl who shows up at a prestigious German dance school, where it's like room and board dance school. The dancers all live there, and then rehearse throughout the entire year-round thing. But then discovers that this dance school is being run by a coven of witches. And so that is the overall premise of the show. Now, this 2018 remake takes a lot of liberties, really quite changes up quite a bit of the just how the plot plays out and that. And I just want to say overall, I kind of dug this movie.
Right on.
It had very, very mixed reviews. It was an absolute bomb at the box office. Did not make its money back. There were, of course, the critics who were big fans of the original and weren't going to be, open to anything remake unless it really, really shocked them and surprised them in some fascinating way. But they, so most of the critics who were already fans of the original didn't go for it. And then, it was very, very mixed reviews. But I kind of dug it. If you're watching watching this movie to be a horror with a plot-driven narrative, I don't think you're going to like it very much. Pretty much while I'm watching this whole movie, I'm like, what's kind of going on? I'm a little bit lost. I'm a little bit bewildered.
So it's more just an overall mood than it is a story.
Yes, and it is so. I mean, it's a very artistic movie. There are multiple scenes where the main character is getting flashes of nightmares. That it is sort of mildly explained that they're sort of projecting this coven of witches is sort of projecting their own memories and nightmares, or the memories and nightmares of the other girls at the dance school into this girl, and you get that little bit of it, but the images flash so quickly, and it's so difficult to tell, like, was that actually important to what's going on, or was it just supposed to be a kind of freaky, weird image? And then there are these other events taking place that I thought were all flashbacks. And some of them are, but then I was kind of surprised to find out that one of them that we'd been following along, because, you know, this non-linear storytelling, that one of them was happening concurrently with these events, and it absolutely did not feel that way throughout. So, yeah, it's kind of confusing storytelling, and if you are absolutely hate that sort of thing, then this isn't going to be your favorite, because if you're just trying to follow the narrative plot, first of all, the plot itself, once you sort through, and this is a nearly 3-hour-long movie, once you sort through just the plot, it's like, well, there wasn't really that much that happened in
much
like,
happens.
If you just lay out the bullet points of the events, it turns out there wasn't really that much that went on here. But that's not what this movie is about. This movie is about the feeling, and it's about the artistry, and strangely, you know, the original Suspiria in 1977, very, very colorful, primary colors, very, very colorful movie. This movie is like all gray and light blue.
We've lost color
everything
in the world lately.
Yes, except for some bright reds, you know, which are obviously evoking blood and viscera and all that sort of thing, very, very intentionally. Now, my biggest criticism of this movie, the thing that I personally really did not like, was that we are at a dance company. They are rehearsing one show that they are preparing to put on, and the whole thing is this girl from America arrives, and there's very little time for her to be integrated into the show, but she ends up being the lead through a series of events. But they're also beginning to rehearse what their next show after this is going to be. And when they finally show you the dance that they've been rehearsing to perform, they just show me the dance. Like, I love dance. I respect dancers. I just show me the dance. And it was so much cutting and close-ups and not showing all the choreography. And I mean, these people practiced. The choreography they had to do was not simple. It's all contemporary ballet, but it's like, it was not simple stuff. And I was like, please show me the dance after all this preparation. And then
you enjoyed So You Think You Can Dance, right?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. And I hated it where there was a couple of seasons where they changed the cinematographer and they were doing more close-ups and stuff. Like, no, pull back, show me the whole darn stage. I want to see complete bodies. I want to see those toes pointed. I don't want to allow all of that cropped off. Like, the people are putting in the work. Let me see the lines. That they've been
not all of us
creating.
are watching it on a phone.
Yeah, exactly. So that really bothered me, that I didn't get to see the dance. That really, really, really bugged me. That is my least favorite thing of this movie. But yeah, overall, I kind of dug it. It's a little bit funky. And then Tilda Swinton, this is also a psychological movie. This version of it is much more delving into pretty much Jungian psychology, straight ahead Jungian psychology, more so than the original did. And so Tilda Swinton is personifying in very real characters within this story, but she is personifying id, ego, and superego. She's playing a triple role in here. For some reason, they try to hide that she's actually playing one of the roles that she's playing. In the credits, they give a fake name for the actor portraying that role, and I'm not quite sure why they would try. It's Tilda Swinton. I mean, she's under a bunch of makeup, but it's her. You can tell it's her.
Maybe she didn't like looking like that character.
I don't exactly know what all was going on there, but yeah, she's very clearly personifications of ego and superego. And it gets the destruction of the ego is very much a theme, in this movie. And so, yeah, I appreciated the artistry of it. I appreciated the sort of psychoanalytic bent that they went on it. I didn't love that they got rid of all the primary colors because that was sort of a standout of the original, but, trying to do something different here. They did change up the plot, so it's not a straight ahead, it's certainly not a shot for shot remake in no way. But yeah, I kind of dug it. I don't think a lot of other people will necessarily.
So not exactly recommended, just mentioned.
But I kind of liked it, but I hated that they didn't show me the dance. At least not the way the dance is there on screen, but just not in the way that I wanted to see the dance.
I love sometimes when you tell me about something I haven't seen, and this just sounds wild.
Yeah. I mean,
I have no idea what this would be like. Even
it is a horror movie. There are witches. I kind of and this goes back to the original too. Like it is very much all from the female perspective, and the notion that the classical thing of witches is a way for women to seize power. Oh yeah, the thing I forgot to mention as well. They very clearly set all of this during the 1977 German autumn. The whole what was the name of that Red Army faction that they hijacked an airplane and they kidnapped some German political leaders trying to get a bunch of political prisoners released. So there's a real life event, and I did find it very strange that the way everything was set up in this movie, the way the events of the characters we're following was paralleling the events that were going on with this real life historical event, that they didn't mention how that real life conflict essentially ended, that there was one of the German representatives who ended up being killed. And I was like, it seemed obvious that that's where everything was leading, because the parallels were right there. And I guess because the parallels were right there, it's perfectly fine. But it just seemed very strange that they gave you the ending for the characters we've been watching and didn't even mention the ending of the real life historical event, even though they had been going through all the news broadcasts throughout the movie. It just felt weird that it's already a 3-hour movie. You can put in another 35 seconds. It seemed very strange to omit that.
By the way, just a side note, how different technology is making me think lately. As you were trying to remember the event in Germany, my hand started moving to the keyboard. I was about to go ask an AI.
Yep.
What was that thing in Germany and that's what I'm doing a lot of lately. So it's like I know everything.
You can look it up after. Yeah. You just look for the German Autumn. The Wikipedia article is well enough to tell you everything that was going on there. But yeah, so there you go. Suspiria 2018. I kind of, for people who, if you've heard what I just said and you're like, hey, that kind of sounds like a thing I'd like to check out, then you'll be the person who likes it. And
does not sound like what I want to watch.
For most people, I probably wouldn't recommend it.
You've said many things that I do want to watch, but that one,
Now that we're through all of that, let's go ahead and say that, let's see. That's not what I wanted to show on this StreamYard linky thingy. How do I make this do what I wanted to do?
I don't know, but
I don't exactly know. There we go. That's good enough.
Hey.
I can put that up there to say that this is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And to get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That is our email address, and by far the best way to get in touch with us. But you can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/AVRant podcast if you want to find us there. YouTube.com/AVRant is where you can come to see our video version of this, and we'll see the images inserted in the video as they're following along. If you want to just look at those images on your own time, or you're listening to the audio only version and you want to reference images that we're talking about, we have a Flickr album. Come to avrant.com, and in the show notes description for every single show, we got a link to the Flickr album for that episode, so you can follow along there. And then you can reach all of us individually. I'm Rob at avrant.com, Tom is Tom at avrant.com, and Lee is Lee at avrant.com.
That's right.
You can reach us via email. So there you go.
It only took me about a decade.
That's right. Did you want to give out your social media handle, or are we just not?
Does anybody care anymore? I mean, if you like the whole Tesla thing, I'm Tesla Lusa on X.
Right.
So what? I'm on Blue Sky as Lee Overstreet, so you can look up Lee Overstreet on Blue Sky.
All right, I'm First Reflect on Blue Sky, and that's pretty much the only place I'm chatting with anybody now. So there you go. We did the social medias.
That counts. I don't know how I feel about all those social medias anymore. It's a weird world. I have X for a specific interest. Mm-hmm. I still have Facebook for friends and family. And then I have I just happen to have Threads and Instagram, and I don't really look at them.
Well, yeah, because I created the handles there just in case those were the things that took off. But
right, that's all I did. And then on Blue Sky, I never even bothered with the Tesla thing. So that's just me personally. So I don't know what to think of it all. It's all just sort of scattered and random.
It's very scattered at this point.
Yeah. Initially, I thought, okay, I'm going to make a clever Lee Overstreet account on everything. That's why I used to be Lee Overtweet on Twitter. That account still exists, but I don't know what it's doing. I guess I could log in and see.
Not a whole lot.
That's just kind of
something that is doing a whole lot are our listeners of the week. Yeah, listeners of the week are folks who are supporting this podcast in some way. If you want to support us financially and you want to do a one-time donation, come to our website, avrant.com. Over on the right-hand side of the desktop version, you'll see a picture of a cup of coffee and it says support AV Rant. If you click on that link, it'll take you to PayPal and you can do a one-time donation there. You can also set up a monthly recurring donation via PayPal if you want to. Now, Tom is the only person who sees those PayPal donations. So if any came in this past week, I don't know about them. So when Tom is back next week, we will mention any names for people who gave us donations on PayPal. I am not leaving you out intentionally. But yes, what I can also mention is you can support us financially another way, which is a monthly subscription over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. You can sign up to do an automatic monthly donation, minimum of $1 a month. So we got 126 patrons over there right now. And we thank you all very much for your financial support.
And as I always say, just hold your finger down on the zero as you're typing in the amount. Just hold it down till it repeats.
Now, if you cannot support us financially, but you support us in any other way, just let us know about it. We'll thank you here in this Listeners of the Week section. So just do the final update on things. Jack came through, and Dan D, who was the winner of our giveaway for the microphone, he let us know that he did, in fact, receive that date and microphone. And why isn't StreamYard letting me add this picture to the thingy? Oh,
that's okay. Everyone's already seen the microphone.
It was up there briefly, but here, let's get rid of this, and then this should let me come back. There it is. Hooray. Thank you, StreamYard. Yeah, there's our picture over there. That was the whole package that Jack sent over to Dan. So yeah, nice complete package. The long USB cord, the microphone clip, the mini tripod, and the nice carry case for everything in there. So Dan was very happy with that, and we're happy that it all worked out. So there you go. Lovely. Then we can also thank Greg. He offered actually to supply another measurement microphone for another AV Rant giveaway at some points. It seems like a lot of people were interested and wanted that Dayton Omni mic. So we'll set all that when Tom gets back next week. We'll set that up. But yeah, Greg wanted to let you know I did receive that email and we are interested in doing that. So yeah, hang on to that measurement mic for us and we'll set up another giveaway in the not too distant future. And then, yes, some folks just sent us notes of gratitude and encouragement that we very much appreciate for just keeping the podcast going through everything that's going on. So we want to mention those names. We want to thank Brad and Brian, Eric and Ilango, Julian, Karl, Henry, Gurinder. And Gurinder had a fun little note because he says, how do you know when you spend too much time looking at home theater gear online? And it's when you see what you think at first is a new dual driver subwoofer from LG, of all companies, only to realize perhaps a few moments later that it was actually a washer and dryer. That's what he was actually looking at in that photo. But first blush, he's like, hey, that looks like a big dual driver subwoofer vertical stacked on top. It's LG. He's like, hey, is LG getting into gigantic 21-inch subs?
So no. Gurinder just sees audio and video products everywhere he looks. You know what this reminds me of? When I was in my early teens, 13, 14, I really wanted a cool jam box, boom box. Yep. That was all the rage around that time. And I remember my dad teasing me one time when he realized I was doodling and drawing pictures of boom boxes as a kid. He's like, man, you really want one of those, don't you?
Seems like.
Yes, Dad, I do. And I got one that Christmas. So
Gurinder
wasn't the new speakers for Gurinder, apparently.
Right, yeah, that wasn't the last of the names. Got a note of gratitude from Dan D, and now he knows all of the 2 Hour Plus Club secret words, thanks to Jack's little Easter egg that he sent along with the Omni mic. We're not going to show that on screen because it is a secret to everyone. But there you go. And final name on the list here, we got Jason. So yeah, there you go. That's a whole bunch of notes of gratitude. We really appreciate them. Big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And with that, why don't we get to some news?
Yeah, let's do some news. Dolby Vision 2. As promised, let's dig into what Dolby announced last week with the release of Dolby Vision 2. First up, There really is a whole Dolby Vision 2 format on the content side of things, but Dolby Vision 2 content will play just fine on Dolby Vision equipment. You just won't be able to take advantage of the new metadata that can be included with Dolby Vision 2 content. For that, you'll need a new Dolby Vision 2 capable display.
Yes.
Canal Plus has already committed to producing Dolby Vision 2 content, and Hisense is already using MediaTek Pentonic 800 chipsets in their newest RGB mini LED flagship TV sets, which are capable of handling Dolby Vision 2. So they're the first TV brand to announce support. There are also 2 tiers of Dolby Vision 2, regular Dolby Vision 2, and Dolby Vision 2 Max. Sorry, I'm just these terms, my God. Max plus extra mega giga, which is meant, the Max is meant for premium TVs, of course, with the aim of fully utilizing their maximum capabilities.
There you go.
The first new batch of metadata is stuff that already existed in the form of Dolby Vision IQ. For instance, Precision Black aims to prevent Dolby Vision 2 content from ever looking too dark by analyzing the display's black level floor just above black contrast and the viewing environment. Dark parts of the image can be dynamically brightened to keep shadow detail visible. Light Sense ties into that by using an ambient light sensor to dynamically adjust the overall image brightness based on your viewing environment. And a new feature is sports and gaming optimization, which can adjust the white point and motion control for those types of content using AI recognition. So
Which
computer's going to watch your football game and figure out what will look better.
Sounds awful to me because it sure sounds like games are just going to be a whole lot bluer, and games are mastered at D65 white point just like our TV and movies are, but everybody seems to prefer them when they're bluer than they're actually supposed to be. So that's sure what, I mean, I don't know for sure that's what they're doing, but why would they say they're adjusting the white point? What else would they be doing if they're adjusting the white point? There's no need to adjust the white point for anything. They all use the same white point, other than very old black and white movies that had a D5400 white point, you know, a redder color to them, an even warmer color than D65, but yeah, I don't know why you're dynamically adjusting the white point of things, but it sure sounds like it's just going to be bluer
good.
To me. I guess so.
It says AI, so it must make it better. All of those features should be a part of regular Dolby Vision 2. Maybe the biggest change didn't even get a bullet point and bold font for some reason, but Dolby Vision 2 can support bidirectional tone mapping. So not only can content that is brighter than the display be tone mapped down to fit the display's capabilities, but content that is not as bright as the maximum capabilities of the display can now be tone mapped up to meet the maximum light output of the display.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous.
That sure doesn't sound like creator's intent to me.
No, it doesn't, does it?
Like, you know, if you're mastering on, let's just say 1,000 nit mastering monitor, and then you decide that the brightest single pixel in this whole movie is 700 nits. That's, you know, you could have made it brighter, but you chose not to. And now they're like, but I'm watching this on a Hisense TV that can blast out 5,000 nits.
Right.
And I don't want a measly 700 nits. I want all 5,000.
Right.
So
this sounds like the kinds of things people for decades have had the attitude that, like, my equipment can do XYZ.
Yeah,
I would like to see or hear it do XYZ.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Like, I remember people being mad. Why am I watching this letterbox laser disc? My screen is black here and here. I want to see my entire screen. And you're just,
yeah. I mean, the notion was once we get 10,000 nit capable displays, they should just never ever have to tone map, because they can show everything exactly nit for nit. Along that PQ curve that Dolby created and then shared as part of HDR10. Like, you can just show it nit for nit exactly according to the signal. I mean, having tone mapping, the original version of tone mapping, made all the sense in the world. Otherwise, you'd just get completely crushed. You know, highlights would just get completely crushed to white because the display couldn't get as bright as the signal was requesting. So that version of tone mapping always made sense. But yeah, now we're doing the thing of, hey, we mastered this thing to 1,000 nits, but you have a 10,000 nit display, so guess what you're going to see?
Yeah, it's just, it still feels like a little AI. It feels like,
I mean, I see where they're coming
from. Old
from.
Video, we're going to make it look better.
Yeah.
Can you, though? Just show me what it just give me the max it's capable of. I don't know. You know how I am. I want to know what was intended for me to see.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what I want to see. So this sounds like a Dolby Vision 2 Max feature from the way Dolby described everything. Lastly, there's a new authentic motion feature. Authentic motion. On the content side of things, motion control metadata can be implemented on a shot-by-shot basis to eliminate judder without destroying the cinematic feel. So it's going to watch how everything's moving and make it better. Is that what I'm reading?
I know. This is why I said on First Blush last week, I kind of feel like Dolby Vision 2 is maybe a little bit dumb and not my favorite thing. But I mean, I don't know if it's a metadata based shot by shot, I guess it's like will allow you to do some frame interpolation on this scene. Like, you know, it's a very slow moving horizontal pan of a shot. Yeah. And it's like, okay, if you allow some frame interpolation in there, I don't think you're really like destroying the original intent. You're helping eliminate the judder. You're getting rid of any persistence blur that there might be on the screen. It's like, okay, I'm not necessarily against that. And if this is kind of like, okay, there's metadata where the creator says, yes, for this particular shot, go ahead, do your frame interpolation thing. And then for this other scene, you know, where it's a couple of people talking and we don't want a weird soap opera effect look, like the metadata flag actually says, hey, TV, you're not allowed to do your motion interpolation thing. I mean, if that's the way it's implemented, maybe
I guess. To be fair, I do hate the slow horizontal pan judder.
Oh, if you get the full judder. Yeah. And you know what? That was not the artistic intent. They did not intend for there to be a herky-jerky juddering motion going across there. That is a technical like mistake that creates that. So if this solves that, if that's the way it's implemented, I have my doubts about how well it's going to be implemented. Just like how we already know, because Dolby Vision IQ has been around. The notion, we've had this notion for a long time, right? The ambient light sensor, so that look, there's actually a specified amount of ambient light that a mastering studio is supposed to have. Mm-hmm. And if your room is brighter than that, you're going to struggle to see shadow detail because
boost everything.
Your pupils are just naturally going to shrink down. You're not going to be able to see the just above black information because the ambient light has biased the pupil in your eye. And so the notion of, okay, so we have a light sensor that says, hey, I recognize that the room is brighter than a mastering studio. Therefore, I'm going to raise that just above black level a little bit to keep all that stuff visible. Like, that's a fine idea in theory. We just know that the real world implementation of those things has not been great because the TV manufacturers do not spend the money on the good light sensors. They put a really rinky dink, low quality light sensor onto that thing. And then you end up with a thing where, somebody walks in front of the TV and the shadow goes on there and you get a light pumping effect and it's just kind of dumb. So real world, I don't think is going to be as good as the notion behind it, but we'll see how it all plays out. But I can't say I'm like champing at the bit for Dolby Vision 2. A lot of this sounds like, do we really need any of that? It also sounds like just a way to get you to buy a new TV and a new AV receiver, because we know our current AV receivers probably aren't going to be able to pass through Dolby Vision 2. Our current sound bars aren't going to be able to pass through Dolby Vision 2. You got to upgrade it all for that new sticker, and that I don't like.
Because 2 is bigger than not 2.
Exactly.
And it must be better. So, this does sound like they got together and said, guys, we've got to get on the AI thing. What
can you also imagine if there's like an AV receiver that can pass through Dolby Vision 2, but not Dolby Vision 2 Max? I mean, I don't know why that would be possible, but I wouldn't put it past them.
Oh, no. They're just like every industry making a thing from cars to AV. You got to have your middle grade thing that misses that one or two finest features because you need an excuse for the top end thing that has the fanciest settings. Let us move on.
Yes.
To Magnetar, which is a very cool type of star. Magnetar isn't allowing the death of Revon or Reavon. How are we saying that?
I think it's just Revon. That's the way I've always said that company.
Revon. Rayvon could be Rayvon. That'd be cool. Maybe. Revon isn't allowing the death of Revon to slow them down in the premium universal disc player market. They just announced their new UDP800 Mark II and UDP900 Mark II models, which are expected to launch at the end of this year for $1,800 and $3,300 respectively. And they look very cool. Magnetar
and at least you can tell just by looking at them, hey, which one is the bigger, more expensive one? It's visually apparent.
It's taller. It must be better. Magnetar says they've listened to customer and installer feedback, so they have improved their image processing, upgraded their audio DACs, added mechanical damping to their optical drives, and expanded their USB audio support while also making the new players Rune ready. Every flavor of optical disc except for HD DVD is supported, including 3D Blu-rays, but the premium price tags mostly have to do with the audio side of things. The $1,800 UDP800 Mark II gets new 2.0 channel low noise op amps, and the flagship $3,300 UDP900 Mark II goes nuts with dual ESS 9038 Pro DACs for analog outputs and a dedicated HDMI audio port with TMDS retiming, plus its USB 3.0 input now supports up to 768 kilobit per second sampling rates for PCM and 512 megahertz sampling for DSD. Going to be no excuse for saying it doesn't sound
unnecessary. Yeah, completely unnecessary stuff on that side.
Does
but
that
how
satisfy
else
everyone finally?
Yeah, how else are you
gonna
going to justify the price tags? I mean, I do like a universal disc player, and we're getting fewer and fewer options as far as that goes. So, good on Magnetar. I mean, I don't want disc players to disappear entirely. Nobody else is announcing new player models at this point, so I'll take what we can get.
They are sadly going to go away, and
sure seems like.
And I know that there'll come a day when having a working disc player is going to be a neato rare thing, just like my fancy VCRs over here in this office. And exactly the frustrating part is fighting against entropy. Can you keep them working? And with tape decks and
really hard to buy a PC optical drive that's capable of reading Ultra HD Blu-rays because they've essentially just stopped manufacturing those. LG was the last manufacturer, and they just stopped like a couple of weeks ago.
So, to be fair, I can't imagine wanting or needing that on my computer, and it hurts my heart because
if you want to back up your disc collection, you better hop on some of that available stock right now.
That's true, or just buy the disc. And then you can find the digital version online, if you know what I mean. There's always somebody
at some point, nobody will be making them anymore if they can't get the optical drive to read the disc.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I hate that sad future where your precious Ultra HD Blu-ray player that still works, you wonder, when is it going to die? And is anybody out there going to fix it? And, there's a sci-fi trope where there's always the weird character that fixes things.
Sure.
There's always and that person is always strange to represent that, okay, this is a nerdy, unusual person, creature who fixes things. And it's always a very messy room with lots of parts, and you bring them the thing that you need fixed to go do the special thing. It's going to be like that. Like right now, you can send a cassette deck off to a handful of people around the country who can fix it. And one day your Ultra HD Blu-ray clear. Yeah.
We have had the thing where just recently there's been a not insignificant number of brand new CD player models that have come out, because that's, the next thing up is the CD players, like vinyl, are making their resurgence. So maybe that's the way it'll go, just have to wait a little while and come back around.
I'm keeping one of everything as far as players, and I want to see how long it'll go, but I need to remind myself that I hope if I live to life expectancy, I'll probably outlive almost every physical media player I have. That's possible.
Right.
A CD player is a little, if something is direct drive and doesn't have a belt, you mostly worry about keeping it in good conditions, like not too much humidity, so nothing seizes up. Lubrication's going to dry up on things over time, but that's pretty easy to fix. You got to hope that plastics don't get too brittle and break, so a gear snaps, or you're never getting that back. Maybe you could 3D print, and maybe technology in the future will keep up with being able to scan something and make a new thing of it. But I'm fascinated to see where that goes. But, even myself, who loves discs and all kinds of formats, I have all these tapes, and I'm just showing you my DVD-Rs that are going in the closet.
That's right. Yep.
I'm not burning anything anymore. No, it's been a while. And I've just decided that the way you do it is data migration. from one type of drive to another. So I just have my big archive that I'm organizing now. That's just going to move from drive to drive throughout my life. And then one day, maybe some much younger than me cousin wants to keep it. I don't know.
But that might be the thing to do with our physical disk collections is, you might want to make those backups so you can just have them on hard drives and keep migrating that data as you go along.
Keep migrating and then, will it to somebody in the future who's really nerdy. So CalebRated and Digital Trends have settled their lawsuits. For those following the saga, details of the settlement are sealed and won't be shared, but Caleb Dennison is back on YouTube and other social media platforms, and he announced a lot of big plans for his new channel. So settled, can't talk about it. That happens a lot in the legal world.
It's a sealed settlement, so he's not going to run afoul of any of the legal agreement, and that is all fair enough. But yes, the upshot is he is back online. That's fantastic. I don't think Digital Trends came out of this whole ordeal looking good at all. Nope. But there you go. It's been, an arduous 4 months for Caleb. But I've definitely always liked his content, so looking forward to what he's going to do. And he's got some big plans. We'll see how many of them all come to fruition, but he's obviously energized and excited. And so that is very good to have Caleb back on YouTube.
I can imagine the stress of a YouTuber with a sizable audience and everything goes away for a while. Whew. Okay, Sofabaton X2. We have a tentative
big news.
Launch
This is
date.
exciting.
Yes, a tentative launch date, straight from the horse's mouth, that they straight up said, we are, quote, of course, welcome to share. So here it is, October 18th, 2025. October 18th, 2025.
That is by far the most specific date that we have ever heard regarding the Sofabaton X2 Smart Remote.
Amen. And yes, we have requested units to review, and Sofabaton has said they will ship those to both Tom and Rob just a short while before the official launch. Not Lee, just Tom and Rob.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe they have a third one. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at reviewing things. Now, they still are saying tentative because the actual for sale units have not arrived at their warehouse yet. They expect to have them at the end of September, and there is always the chance of shipping delays or problems with the first containers of mass-produced units. So if a launch delay happens, it's not because of any planned change, but it's still a possibility. Yes, emergencies and strange things can happen. But boy, I like that date, October 18th.
That's right. It's very specific.
The design of the Sofabaton X2, though, is finalized.
Yeah.
The big missing piece of info, though, is the price. We still don't know what the final MSRP will be. You should definitely expect X2 to cost more than the $200 X1S model, though.
Yes.
So let's have a look at their preliminary specs and features list, shall we?
Yeah. Let's
go through it. First of all, looks cool. I like the little globe. It looks like it should talk to me and walk around.
So, yes, if you're seeing the image or following along in the Flickr album, so over on the left-hand side of the image, we have what very much looks like the existing Sofabaton hub. Whether there's been any changes to that, I'm not exactly sure, but it's following the exact same design language as the Sofabaton hub that is out there right now. So that comes with. Then we've got the X2 wand remote itself with a charging cradle, which was not part of the very original design. Because the X1 and the X1S, you just plug those into a USB cable to recharge them. But people requested that there be a charging cradle, and so that comes with. Then there is this round ball globe thing, which we'll talk about a little bit later. That is actually an optional add-on product. We are assuming there'll be a bundle available, but that is an IR extender. So you can put an IR extender in another room without having to buy like a third-party IR extender kit type of system. But that does not come with the X2 like in all SKUs. That is going to be an optional add-on, that little ball that we're seeing in the image.
That little IR extender ball, I'm telling y'all, it needs to be a little robot that walks around and talks. It's cute as possible. If that, I would pay a lot extra for a little Sofabaton walk around robot that talks.
Right.
Just beeps and talks. A little R2D2 kind of sounds would be amazing. That thing's adorable.
I don't think we're going to get it at the expected price.
Like, I don't care what it does. I just like the way it looks. And I love a cradle too, because I'm sick of, in the modern world, we have so many cables just hanging over furniture. Like in our house, there's 2 or 3 places around our house where little cables hang and little charging pads, wireless charging pads are sitting. And I just can't figure out a way to make it nicer. And so
Right.
I love a cradle. All right. So shall we go through product configuration?
Yeah,
and
let's go
parameters?
through real quick and hit the headlight highlights
Okay.
here. Yeah.
So the core components: handheld remote control, charging base hub, and infrared repeater that we just talked about.
So the
Communication.
infrared repeater that they're talking about, those are the little pigtail wired extenders that plug into the hub. So that is not the little round ball thing. The infrared repeaters are like little extension cables that you can plug into the hub so that if something is inside of a cabinet, you can still get an IR signal into it.
Yes. Communication protocol: Bluetooth, infrared, Wi-Fi, RF433/RF315. That should be all
those are
kinds of good ways.
radio frequency control directly. So that's really, really interesting. Yeah.
That's nice because I hate Bluetooth. I've just always hated Bluetooth. What a terrible standard that was.
But
I guess it was amazing in like
it'll do it.
2003.
Right.
Battery and battery life: 1200 milliamp hour lithium battery, operating time 3 to 4 weeks.
Not too bad. Yeah.
Not too bad. I'll take a month. It's pretty good. The interactive screen: 2.4 inch high definition touchscreen. So I'm guessing at least a 720p in one direction.
One would think, and then I very much like that, I've talked about how on the X1 and the X1S, I wasn't a big fan of the back button placement for the screen itself. This one, we can see in the image, the back button for the screen is at the bottom left of the screen.
Yes,
so you
where it's
shouldn't have
logical.
to make it a two-handed operation for this. And then they've got a little star button over there, which is going to bring up your favorites, and one thing that they're going to talk about in one of the next coming slides.
Do you know my left-handed wife switched her back button location on her phone? And occasionally I'm doing something on her phone. There's always some reason she hands me and says, here, do that. That blew my mind. Didn't know you could do that. And she just thinks it's so cool. It's wonderful. So let's cover basic functions. Same as the X1S. Centralized management of multiple devices, supports adding up to 50 devices, including TVs, set-top boxes, receivers, projectors, and other audiovisual equipment. So up to 50. If you have more than 50, I want to meet the person that has more than 50.
Since this can do some whole house home automation type integration in that, you can get up to that device count pretty quickly. So
sure,
but it's a decent amount.
Right. So activity scenario linkage: you can create custom activities such as movie mode to trigger multiple associated devices to work together with a single click. So like a big macro, that's great.
Yep.
Third-party voice platform compatible with, should we say the names? Who cares?
Sure. Yeah.
Alexa and Google Assistant. Voice commands directly control devices. After syncing with Google Home, you can see Sofabaton's activity directly on the devices page.
Yeah.
So here comes some X2 upgrade features.
Yeah, these are the big ones.
These are the big ones. Intelligent control expansion. That sounds very sci-fi, doesn't it? I don't know why that makes me laugh. Intelligent control expansion. That's what I'm going to say from now on when I'm eating too much. New Home Assistant integration and IP control, HTTPS, supporting cross-platform device linkage.
So being able to integrate this thing into Home Assistant is huge. Home Assistant is the third-party software that many people, they don't necessarily start out thinking that Home Assistant is going to be the way they're going to control their smart home, but almost everyone ends up with Home Assistant because inevitably you end up with one device or another that just doesn't integrate the way you want it to with whatever chosen OS you've gone for your whole house home automation system, and Home Assistant is the solution that almost everybody lands on. So this is absolutely the right move for Sofabaton to have made. They're like, hey, rather than trying to directly integrate with every single smart home ecosystem that exists out there, let's just do Home Assistant, and then we're going to cover almost everybody. So that is huge news. It's not something I'm going to be the greatest person to review because I just don't have a home automation type setup, and I don't use Home Assistant myself. So I'm not the best reviewer for that feature, but I recognize the importance of it.
Right. I feel like some sort of Luddite because I don't have any kind of automation, anything.
Yeah.
I get up and flip the light switch.
I've got some Philips Hue lights, which my X1 can already directly control. But yeah, I don't have a Home Assistant or home automation type of setup myself.
Gotcha. Infrared signal coverage. The remote control has a built-in transmitter, and the hub can be paired with a repeater to extend control to other rooms, enabling control of infrared devices throughout the entire house. handy.
Yeah, so this is a big one because, again, one of the complaints that people had is that the X1 or X1S remotes themselves, the wand that you hold in your hand does not output any infrared. All the wand does is talk to the hub. So all of the control signals are coming from the hub with the X1 or the X1S. They're like, hey, people didn't like that. They changed that. They put an infrared emitter on the wand itself. So that's going to work. And then, yeah, we already mentioned that little ball repeater that you can put in a different room, and you don't have to buy an entirely separate IR extender kit.
I want to carry the remote to like a restaurant and turn off televisions.
Right.
That's what I want to do. Bluetooth functionality expansion. Bluetooth supports one-to-many connections with no delay in switching control.
Another big thing, you don't have to Bluetooth pair individual devices. It can be connected to multiple Bluetooth devices simultaneously. Big deal.
That is very cool considering how bad Bluetooth is. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi optimization. Support for more Wi-Fi device brands in addition to the Roku, Sonos, Philips, Hue brands already supported by X1S, as Rob just mentioned. More brands will be added in the future. Lights, sockets, smart TVs, and speaker systems. Support as
Home
remote control.
Yeah,
Home Assistant remote
Yeah.
control. There you go. Quickly bring up the numeric keypad is a new feature. The collection button below the screen allows you to quickly bring up the numeric keypad in macros.
So that's that star button that I mentioned. Yeah.
There you go. Matter cross-platform compatibility, not yet available.
Yeah, so they had the logo for Matter, but that's not going to be there at launch. And good to know. Good to know that you're not going to be able to count on that at launch.
Right. There you go. A code repository and interaction upgrade.
Yes. So all that is yes, they're continuing to add more devices to their code database, and they're like sifting through it so that there's not quite so many repeats or things that have like redundant controls or unnecessary commands in there. They're cleaning up the database.
There you go. A significant improvement in interaction response speed as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Contents of X2 packaging box. Let's see what's in the box.
Yeah.
To get the main devices, the remote, the hub, charging dock. Power cables. You get 2 5-volt 2-amp power adapters and 2 1.2 meter USB-C to USB-A cables. That's about 3 feet.
One for your hub, one for your cradle.
There you go. IR blasters. You get one 2 meter, 3.5 millimeter IR blaster cable, dual emitters on that. One 3 meter, 3.5 millimeter IR blaster single emitter.
So that's everything that comes in the regular package, and then there is the R1 repeater package. That's the little ball that we were talking about. So,
that's the adorable ball that I want to make R2-D2 noises and walk around.
And then what's kind of nice is that has an additional IR blaster cable, just a single emitter on that, but you can have the ball out in the room sending out its IR signals, and then you can add something inside of a cabinet with that in a different room. So a really complete package. I'm really excited about this.
And then I can speak to it and go, I want to speak to it. Hey, Sofa Ball, go ahead and bring up this.
So I'm hoping it all works the way we're hoping it does. Honestly, if all it does is add a touchscreen to the X1S, I'd be pretty happy. But some of these other upgrades that they've mentioned there, and that design is finalized, I'm like, yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot that I want to criticize about this thing. And I think it's fantastic they went with Home Assistant.
It sounds like they listen to people who care about this,
sure
and that's
does.
A very good sign.
The only problem is if this thing is like $750 or something, then that's going to be that is absolutely not the price I'm expecting it to be. But if it were, I'm saying that might be the only fly in the ointment.
Listen, though, I'm paying $750 for Sofa Ball. Hey, Sofa Ball, switch to ESPN. Beepity boop. And then it walks around and wags its little tail or something. I'm ready for it. So that's all the contents you get. Shall we move on now?
Let's crack on.
For another part of the show we call comments. Nathan heard our discussion last week about Chris's JVC NX7 projector and whether he should upgrade the whole thing to a newer laser model or wait a bit longer by purchasing one last replacement lamp. For what it's worth, Nathan thinks that upgrading to the current NZ700 makes a stronger case for itself than what we said. So here are some of his points. The real-world light output difference is bigger than the numbers on the spec sheet make it seem, especially since the lamp-based NX7 lost a significant amount of its out-of-the-box light output within the first 200 hours, while the NZ700's gradual dimming is non-linear, and it only dims a very small amount over the first 10,000 hours of use. Okay.
Mhm.
He'd be able to get the latest firmware updates. JVC typically keeps updating projector models for 3 to 5 years. So the NX7 is past that point, but the NZ700 still has a few years to go.
Mhm.
The NZ700's chassis is smaller and lighter, making it easier to mount. And the throw distance can be shorter, allowing for a larger image in a smaller room. That could be very significant. The lower power consumption is good on its own, but it also means lower fan noise, and it powers on and off much quicker. That's another good point.
Yep.
Nathan just thought those extra points make upgrading to the NZ700 more compelling than what we said last week, what Rob and Tom said last week, especially since Chris made it clear that 4K 120 support is not a priority at all.
It's always easier to spend other people's money.
Yes.
Especially when it's like $9,000, which was the little bit of hesitance that I had on it there. Yes, all good points. Some of them I did gloss over last week there a little bit. But yeah, no, all of that is good information if that is enough to convince you to spend multi-thousands of dollars instead of several $100s for one last replacement lamp, then fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, was Chris one of the $1.8 billion lottery winners?
It doesn't sound
Maybe.
like. I don't think he'd be asking us this question if he
I would disappear for a while. Let's put it that way. Haven't heard from Lee. What's going on with Lee?
Yeah.
Why is he so quiet? Why does he have that grin on his face? So, shall we do questions? The core
Finally on
feature
this
of this
question
show.
and answer podcast. Yeah, let's get to it.
Question and answer podcast. It's time for questions. So, from last week, we always start with the leftover questions. Eric had a question last week, and now we're getting to it. Eric asked us a little while ago about some potential equipment upgrades he was considering. On our advice, he stuck with LG OLEDs and got himself both an 83-inch and a 65-inch. He's very pleased with both, and that sounds fantastic. I thought about upgrading the OLED. I kind of want to go to the 83, and that's too damn expensive, but for us right now, 77, maybe, really good deal. He also followed our suggestion to get an Onkyo TX NR7100 receiver from Accessories for Less, and it's been great. Man, yeah, Accessories for Less is a great way to do things. I'm here to tell you, I was very happy when I did that. A nice upgrade over his old Denon S510BT, so those were some good recommendations all around, and that is great to hear. On his own, he also replaced his single Dayton Sub 1000 he had been using. He found a used SVS PB12 NSD on Facebook Marketplace. That's a good way to do that. And then he also bought a brand new Shure VTF2 Mark V. They seem to pair very well together, and he can't believe all the deep bass he's been missing this whole time. You think that's bad? Wait till you go listen to someone else's home theater that doesn't have it. That's when it hits. It isn't just when you go, ooh, this sounds really, really good. It hits when you listen to something that's not
when
as
you
good.
go back, you very much notice things by their absence.
Right. That's what I was talking about with my car stereo. So, and now that he has 2 subwoofers, he was planning to go through Rob's 12-step guide. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Are you sure?
PTSD for Lee.
Are you sure, Eric? Okay. As we know, the Shure subs don't have fully variable phase adjustments, but the SVS does. The 12-step guide mentions only having to adjust the fully variable phase on one of the subwoofers, not both. So is he going to be fine with this arrangement? Yes, except for the psychological effects that will last the rest of your life. Other than that,
if you really can't get past this is definitely a case of perfection is the enemy of good enough. So yeah, don't drive yourself insane the way Lee did. He's still recovering to this day. But
you know what? It didn't hurt me in the long run. It was interesting. I did learn from it. It did feel a bit traumatic, but in the end, automatic adjustments really, I got so lucky, if you remember.
Sure.
My placement of my subs, I got so lucky that it barely needed anything.
No, but I mean, you followed the recommended advice of where you should place those 2 subs. So that worked the way we're hoping it's supposed to work. If you had been forced to or just preferred to physically position your subs in different, far less optimal locations, then the 12-step guide might have been, more useful to you. Like it would have made a bigger difference.
That's right.
So yeah, the only thing I'll point out is that I mentioned in that 12-step guide that I wrote, which we'll link to, of course, that you adjust the fully variable phase on the subwoofer that is physically closest to your seats. And the simple reason there is when you're adjusting that fully variable phase, you're essentially adding an electrical delay to the signal. So it makes sense that what you're trying to do is create a beneficial pattern of wave interference, one where that wave interference pattern is not creating gigantic null dips that there's no way to ever fill in, or massive crests where the sound waves are just doubling up on each other. And even if you cut it way, way down, it's still going to be problematic, especially from seat to seat to seat, where it's just not uniform. What we're trying to achieve is nice uniformity without any massive dips and without any massive humps. And so it makes sense that what you're going to do is electrically delay the signal coming from the subwoofer that is physically closer to you so that those sound waves are meeting at different wave interference patterns. And through sheer trial and error, you find the one that, has the most uniformity across this 3-seater couch and the fewest giant peaks and dips. Now, if you for whatever reason, because those two subs are pretty close in size, but not exactly identical in size, and maybe it just so happens that because of physical dimensions, you're forced to place the SVS sub physically farther away from you and the shoe sub physically closer to you. This can still work as long as that fully variable phase knob can go past the 180-degree mark. Because now what you're essentially doing is delaying that signal by an entire cycle. And so you're not getting the thing where... Yeah, you're not getting the thing where you only, because there are some fully variable phase knobs on some subwoofers that only have the range from 0 to 180 degrees. Right. So you're never able to delay it by the combination of physical distance and the electrical phase delay to be one entire cycle behind the other subwoofer. You need to go past the 180 degree mark to do that. So the SVS sub, I don't remember an SVS sub that ever had less than 270 degrees of adjustment. So I think you're going to be absolutely fine in either case. But yeah, you don't need to have fully variable phase adjustment on both subwoofers. That is not a necessity. One is enough.
I do remember the phase adjustment part thinking, okay, I can hear a difference when I change it a lot. So yeah. I'm not insane.
Yeah.
But I just didn't need to. And it was just so lucky and wonderful. Since he can't just set both subs to the same volume knob setting, given that they're two different brands and models, he should use an SPL meter to level match them, right? I mean,
yeah.
You can. Yeah, that'd be
probably.
Great. He doesn't own an SPL meter. Do we have a particular one we recommend, Rob?
So in this instance, you probably have a smartphone. I would recommend just getting an SPL meter app on your smartphone. Now, don't go for one of the stupidly annoying ones that, says it's free, but then to take a measurement, you have to watch an ad. Just spend the $2 because a lot of the perfectly good SPL meter apps on both Android and iOS are like $2.
I swear I have one and I hardly ever use it. I can't remember what it's called.
The Studio 6 digital one is great. Perfectly mimics the old Radio Shack SPL meter. So that's what I would honestly suggest, because all you're really needing here is relative levels. Like, it doesn't matter if it's absolutely precise to be exactly the SPL level. Like, you're just trying to relatively have the two subwoofers playing at the same volume level. An SPL meter app is totally sufficient for that purpose. But let's just say for whatever reason you absolutely say no to that. I'm just going to mention Cross Spectrum Labs. They sell a Verified Plus Galaxy brand CM140 SPL meter. This is like professional grade with a full correction file. It's $155 plus $11 shipping. It is massive overkill. But the thing is, the correction file they give you with this is good enough that you could use this SPL meter as a measurement microphone with Room EQ Wizard. That's how good the correction file that they provide with it is. So, if you want to kill two birds with one stone, because this still is a fully verified and calibrated standalone SPL meter that is very, very accurate, and then the correction file is good enough, you can load it into Room EQ Wizard and use it as a measurement mic. So maybe you can justify it that way if you really want to go overboard. If you just want a little pocketable one that you can carry around with you that isn't your smartphone, Triplet is still selling their little TSC MC1 Sonocheck mic. It's good enough. $55 is not what it used to cost when Parts Express was carrying it. They had it for like $35, but hey, tariffs and unavailability and all kinds of weirdness has turned this into a $55 little SPL meter if you want to do it, but it's good enough for this purpose.
I kind of miss the old days. You'd run down to Radio Shack. They'd have something.
Yep.
It'd be not $15. They don't exist. All right. How about some new questions?
Let's get to it.
Finally, the real core of the show. New questions.
Three-fifths of the way podcast into it.
Yeah, whatever. We're entertaining people, Rob.
That's hopefully.
We hope so. So Brad has questions. Brad has a TCL QM8 TV and an Onkyo RZ70 receiver. He uses the latest generation Apple TV 4K for his streaming devices. It's plugged into his Onkyo, which then feeds his TCL TV. Mm-hmm. All of the streaming apps he uses look great with one exception. If he plays anything that is in HDR10 Plus on Amazon Prime Video, the image is so dark that it's virtually unwatchable. Do we have any idea why this is happening and what he can do about it? He can turn off the Apple TV 4K's match content, match dynamic range setting to prevent the Apple TV 4K from outputting HDR10 Plus, but then he only gets SDR. And he can force the Apple TV 4K to only ever output HDR10 or Dolby Vision, regardless of what the original signal was. But then he isn't sure he's seeing things the way they were really supposed to look. That's always the fear. Like, this looks great, but could it look better? He can also mess with his TV settings specifically and only for HDR10 Plus from Amazon Prime Video. But even that doesn't really look correct, since he is jacking the brightness setting all the way up, and black bars and other black parts of the image end up looking washed out as a result. Yes. What can and should he do, Rob?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was not personally familiar with this issue, but just sleuthing around on the internet and doing some searching, and that is you do not seem to be alone, and it does not seem to be limited to only the Apple TV 4K. There was quite a few Samsung TV owners who were using the built-in Amazon Prime Video app on the Samsung TV, who were complaining that anything they played that was HDR10 Plus was way too dark. Not just I'm not used to HDR being darker because it was meant to be viewed in a dark room. I can't see anything dark.
It's just gone.
Yeah, something is gone. Really, really not right. So, given that sort of anecdotal evidence, it sure seems like this is a problem on Amazon Prime Video's end. That it's not really anything you're doing wrong, especially when every other service and every other format, not everything on Amazon Prime Video is HDR10 Plus. And so when he's watching something that's only available in HDR10 or in Dolby Vision, he's like, it looks great on Amazon Prime Video through the Apple TV 4K, through his existing signal chain, not changing any settings. Everything looks great except for specifically HDR10 Plus on Amazon Prime Video. HDR10 Plus from other services looks okay. So it's not that the TV just inherently can't handle HDR10 Plus properly. It's just this one streaming service.
That's super frustrating. So if he sets it to only ever output HDR10 or Dolby Vision, that converts everything from every app.
Everything. Yeah, it converts your menu will be in HDR10 or Dolby Vision. Things that are in SDR will be output in HDR10 or Dolby Vision. Now you could obviously just do the manual change only when you come across an HDR10 Plus. And so I would just choose the HDR10, right? Force it into HDR10 output. That is going to be fine. But, HDR10 is there because there are plenty of displays that don't support HDR10 Plus. And when Amazon Prime Video comes across a display like that, it just defaults back down to HDR10. So that is a workaround solution. It's a number of button presses through the Apple TV 4K's menu, but it's probably the most surefire way of not messing anything else up and then giving you a viewable image that is not all the way down to SDR, but is avoiding the problem of the HDR10 Plus bug that really does just seem to be a bug on Amazon Prime Video's own end. Now, that said, one thing I would recommend trying, because it's easy to try and it's completely free, is in your Apple TV 4K's video settings, there is the chroma setting. And very often people will choose, or by default, it sets itself to 444, the maximum chroma setting that you can have. And some TVs, when they receive a YCBCR 444 signal, they assume that that is coming from a computer. That is just by default the way many TVs are set up to do. They treat an RGB uncompressed signal and a YCBCR 444 signal the same, and they assume it's coming from a computer, and they assume that means it is using the full RGB 0 to 255 video format range. And so anything that is below the video format signal of 16 just gets crushed to absolute black, and that could explain the overly darkened image. So a very simple potential fix for that is, I know it's unintuitive because you're manually putting it down to a smaller number, but I rest assured, the video signal that is coming from all of our streaming services is coming in a chroma subsampled 420 signal format. At some point, something in the video signal chain does end up converting it all the way to RGB, but the signal that's actually coming in from the streaming service is chroma subsampled at 420. So if you set your Apple TV 4K to output chroma 420 instead of 444, sometimes for those TVs that look at a 444 signal and they're like, hey, that's coming from a PC computer, it's, the full video range. If you set the Apple TV 4K to output 420, it fixes that issue. It's like, oh no, this is a regular video signal. 16 is black, not 0. So it doesn't crush everything below video signal 16. And very often that is the fix. So that's an easy thing to try. Non-destructive. You can put it back if it doesn't work, and it's worth giving a shot.
If that works, let us know. I'm actually really curious if that happens to do it. But obviously the Amazon Prime people need to figure that out.
Yeah, because it's very specific to that one format on that one service.
How frustrating when everything works but the one thing. I hate that sort of thing. Brian's in the process of putting together a new home theater system from scratch. How fun. When it comes to subwoofers, he doesn't have a budget set in stone, but if we picture something in the range of $2,000 for subwoofers, that'll be in the ballpark. What are the key factors he should consider when choosing a subwoofer model besides just price? Is it all about size and deep bass extension? Is there some sort of pecking order when it comes to sealed versus ported versus passive radiators, one driver, dual drivers, or dual opposed drivers, servo feedback versus DSP control? And if one sub can connect to your Wi-Fi network and or has a companion app, would that count as an advantage over a subwoofer model that lacks those things? Kind of. There are a lot of subwoofer choices out there, and he wants to know how to rank them for himself and ultimately make this tough decision.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think the first thing we have to know is his equipment room situation, all of that. We need to know his room.
Of all the things, the subwoofer doesn't even enter the picture as priority number one. We've got to know the room. And when we're talking about the room, we are not talking about your designated theater area, right? Many people come to us and it's like, it is a living room setup, but the living room is wide open to the dining room and the kitchen and a hallway to the rest of the house. Or it's a room, but it's open to a loft above. Or it's in a basement, but it's a fairly open basement. This isn't actually a enclosed space. So when we say the room, we're talking about everywhere the air can move. That's like all of that. And we're talking cubic footage, not just square footage, right? If you've got a tall vaulted ceiling, that adds to the amount of air that whatever subwoofers you're buying have to be able to move that air. And there is no replacement for displacement. That famous old say, it works for engines and it works for subwoofers as well. But we've got to know with the actual cubic footage volume of air that we're dealing with. That is absolutely priority number one. Once you know that, it now becomes a matter of, hey, if this is a living room setup, I don't actually want to pressurize the entire house. That is an unpleasant experience for everyone living in that house. Because when we're talking pressurization...
Unnecessary.
Pressurization is what happens when you have enough sound pressure level being generated by your bass producing things, however many subwoofers that might be, that wherever you walk in that wherever the air can move scenario, the volume level essentially stays the same, because what we're relying on is the sound traveled from the subwoofer across the room, bounced and reflected off of the walls, came back, interacts with itself, plus the output from the other subwoofers that are also going across the room and reflecting off, and you end up with this wave pattern in the entire open space where when you have fully pressurized that room, it is now like uniform pretty much wherever you go. Now, if we're trying to reach over 100 decibel bass, and it's actually the case that your entire house is open, that is not going to be a fun scenario. That is going to be some massive output, and it's just not realistic, especially for $1,000 a sub. If we're talking 2 subwoofers,
that's going to be physically uncomfortable
put together. We've had ourselves a little glitch here. Okay, I think we've come back.
Yes,
so
I'm seeing some glitches from you, but I'm trying to ignore it.
Okay. That's all right. So that's priority number 1 is figuring out the space we're really dealing with, and then being in the real world about it, and recognizing whether it makes sense to actually try to fully pressurize to like cinema reference volume. Now, if we're talking about an enclosed and dedicated room where it is going to be possible to nicely pressurize that whole thing, then size does matter. Because what are we talking about? Are we talking about a spare bedroom? Or are we talking about a room that's 18 by 30? Just the physical limitations of where a subwoofer can physically live in that room does matter. So that is going to be, it needs to make sense that this thing physically fits, at least the footprint, if nothing else, fits into the room that you're working with. And then, Tom and Rob and Lee, we're going to be different when it comes to extension, because everybody online now is worrying about infrasonic extension. Oh, if getting down to 20 hertz is good, then getting down to 10 hertz must be better, and getting down to 1 hertz must be like the pinnacle. We say all of that is really, really nonsense. We do care about the actual perceptible range, and it is really nice if you're like building from scratch to have subwoofers that can genuinely output down to 20 hertz. That's what we're going to care about. So those are our top priorities. Now, how you get there, whether you're controlling that via servos or via DSP or via just sheer brute force from a overly spec'd wattage amplifier, like however you get there, we don't really care. We really don't. We're not going to laud one of those methods over the other. And in the sort of price range that you mentioned, the likelihood that you're going to get a really good dual driver subwoofer setup that outperforms just a larger single driver subwoofer in the type of price range that you've mentioned is really unlikely. So chances are we're going to be looking at a single driver sub that is, almost certainly 12 inches or larger, just given the price point that you're talking about. Now, Tom and I are almost always going to recommend you go with a ported sub, because it's almost like getting extension for free. It means that you have to have a physically larger cabinet so that you can have a port inside that is physically long enough to be tuned to a nice low frequency. Right. But that is almost certainly the way that we're going to go here. However, if you're in a very small enclosed room, then a sealed subwoofer is physically going to make more sense, and it is going to couple better with the room. So a lot of this is, it depends. And what does it depend on? The room. The room is the thing we need to know about most of all. That determines almost everything else. I'm not going to favor one sub over another just because it's DSP or just because it's ported or just because it's dual driver or a single driver. It's like, it's the right tool for the job, and the job is determined by the size of the room.
So is there a room volume amount where you start to cross over from suggesting sealed to ported subwoofer? Is it large
like
living room size or what?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you go like 12 by 15 by 8, fairly common size for like a spare bedroom, I would probably prefer to use a sealed subwoofer in there. Again, both because physically it just makes more sense to have two smaller subwoofers in a room that size, and then they're going to couple very nicely. You go larger than that, it's going to make more sense to go to a, not gigantic, but a ported sub.
Right. I think we're at 12 by 20. Is the size of our space that has the 2 sealed 12-inch subwoofers from SVS.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
once
feel
you go
like
larger, it just
anything.
means that if you are using a sealed sub, you're going to have to go maybe a little bit like more amplifier power and larger driver than you might initially think. It's like a smaller driver and a lower amplifier power, but a much larger ported box is going to be able to work just as well in that room as a considerably higher wattage, perhaps larger driver, but then sealed and more compact sealed subwoofer.
And one other question that comes to mind for me is, do any audio engineers on a movie ever include anything on purpose below 20 hertz?
I mean, all evidence that I've heard is no. There are the people who swear by, this movie has 16 hertz and it has 12 hertz, and I'm like, seems like it was a mistake. Just like how, you can have a vinyl record that had infrasonic frequencies on it. It was a mistake. It wasn't put there on purpose.
It's also going to sound terrible because the RIAA curve boosting the bass.
That's right.
It's not going to be any good at all. It's going to feel interesting coming out of a subwoofer. All right. That we need to know his room is what we're getting at.
That's exactly it.
Right back in, tell us about your room, and maybe a little bit about what you want to listen to, but mostly the room. Room is everything. Controls how you can get to that accuracy you want and need. But that budget ought to get him there for all but the largest spaces.
Oh, yeah. There'll be options.
Let's move on to Julian. Julian says, our help aided him in constructing a home theater that wildly outperforms his expectations. Heck yeah.
Hooray.
Oh, you love to hear that. That's good. He simply couldn't wait any longer for the Sofabaton X2 remote. Whoops, could have waited till October 18th, but nope.
We did not know at the time. Yeah.
So he bought an X1S. He's not suffering. Right. Most of his home theater gear lives outside of the theater room. It's on the other side of the front right corner of the theater in a lounge area on the other side of the wall. And the Sofabaton hub does a great job of controlling all of the gear in that room while receiving commands from the X1S remote itself in the theater. But he does still need to control a couple of devices within the theater room itself, so he poked a little hole in the wall and fed the Sofabaton IR extender cables that come with the hub through from the lounge into the theater. Everything is working great except for one thing. The JVC NX5 projector. Since it is ceiling mounted at the back of the room, roughly 20 feet away from the little IR extender cables in the front right corner, it doesn't read those signals the majority of the time. Some folks on the forums, got to watch out for the forums, said that the little IR extenders are really only meant to go right next to the device they're controlling and don't have very much range. So what's the best way to fix this? Could he get a substitute IR extension blaster that can plug right into the Sofabaton hub and provide more range inside the theater? Or does he need to get an IR repeater kit? Or is there some other way to solve this? So yeah, he needs to get the IR signal to the projector better.
That's right.
The only thing it's missing. So does he need a way to split that and run something all the way to the projector, or can we just blast harder?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to come at this. I mean, one solution that immediately comes to mind is it sure looks like in the lounge area, all of his equipment is like pretty close together. So one thing you could do is just flip this. You put the hub inside the theater, and you've already got the hole in the wall, so you put the little IR extender blasters, and they've got 3 emitters that come with it. So, that looks like it should be able to cover that little equipment rack that you've got in the lounge area. So my first thought was, you just flip this physical arrangement. You put the hub in the theater, you put the extenders into the lounge, because I think that's going to work out just fine. But if it doesn't, then yes, it is just a pretty standard IR extension port that is on there. You could just get a third-party actual IR blaster as opposed to just the, very small little, almost meant to like stick directly onto the IR receptor, eyes on your devices. They've got a little bit more range than that, but they're not a full-on blaster. Yeah, you could just get a third-party blaster and replace the one that there. The other thing you could do is just get a 3.5 millimeter extension cable and run that little extender all the way to your projector at the back of the room and put it right onto its sensor. That could be the other way you do it.
I love the idea of just swapping. That's kind of cool. See, that's that outside the box thinking that Rob
The other thing you could do is, now that we know the X2 is coming next month, you could upgrade, because then the wand of the X2 itself sends out IR, unlike the X1S, so that can just directly control the JVC in the room.
Hey, that's a good point. October 18th solves his problems, doesn't it?
It could.
Get on that. But yeah, if you swap the two, I want to hear if that works. That's a free thing to try, right?
Yeah.
So try that. I want to know if that works. Otherwise, tell us if you do upgrade. I can't wait to find out how much the upgrade is. Let's move on to a question from Ryan. Ryan took issue with our whole contention that running Odyssey Multi-EQ XT32 with Sub-EQ HD so that it sets independent distances and levels for 2 subwoofers using 2 separate subwoofer pre-outs, and then manually changing the distance settings afterward to address bass cancellation issues doesn't work. Okay. We've said that you would need to be able to do the equalization part of things over again after having manually changed the 2 subwoofer distance settings. So that is why we recommend using a Y-splitter instead and setting your Odyssey AV receiver to only use a single subwoofer pre-out. Ryan thinks we're wrong about that, and he took room EQ measurements as evidence to share. We don't want there to be any mix-up when it comes to his experiment and wording, so here is his email in his own words. I'd like to start this email off by saying I completely mean no disrespect whatsoever. However, I would like to disagree with what Rob was saying in podcast 983, timestamp at 1:34. That's 1 hour, 34 minutes. Rob talks about when using independent sub connections on an AVR for multiple subs. When Odyssey sets the distance/delay for those subs, then Odyssey also sets the equalization as mentioned in podcast 983. Rob then continues to speak about if you went back into the AVR and changed the sub distance/delay from the original Odyssey calibration. That, in theory, would compromise the Odyssey equalization. Well, wouldn't that be the same issue if you changed the crossovers? And unfortunately, with Odyssey, you always need to change the crossovers, as Odyssey calibrated the system with those crossovers in place. So if you went back into the system, changed the crossovers, wouldn't that also compromise the Odyssey equalization? It would be the same compromise and just as Rob was saying, if you change the sub distance/delay. So I did a little test to see what happens to the sound exactly when the subwoofer distance is changed within the AVR. I used REW to measure
the
these
Room EQ
tests.
Wizard. Yeah.
Room EQ Wizard, thank you. The first test I did in Room EQ Wizard was after an Odyssey calibration. The only thing I changed was the crossovers, as I put all crossovers at 100, as that's what works best with my system. And I put all speakers to small. The first test in Room EQ Wizard is the red line, and I left the subwoofers and all distances as Odyssey set them. And again, all these images, if you're listening and not watching, you can get to these at the website. The next test in Room EQ Wizard was the green line test, number 2. And the only thing I changed was the subwoofer's distance. Sub 1 was at 20.2, and I changed it to 24.2. And sub 2 was set at 12.9, and I changed it to 17.9. As you can see from the Room EQ Wizard results, when the subwoofer distances was changed, it only changed the sound from 10 hertz to 160 hertz as it should. Nothing after 160 hertz was changed within the sound. You can also see that after I adjusted the subwoofer's distance to 24.2 and 17.9, it took out a very large null from 80 hertz to 120 hertz that the Odyssey calibration didn't fix. Also, by changing the subwoofer distance from the original Odyssey calibration, it somewhat fixed a null at 58 hertz to 67 hertz and another 145 hertz and to 162 hertz. Overall, changing the subwoofer distance after the Odyssey calibration really helped with the overall bass. So, as you can see from the Room EQ Wizard results, when the subwoofer distances are changed, it only changes the sound at the crossover you have set at the mains and below. Nothing above that is changed within the sound. Whew. What's our response to his findings? I'm going to drink some water after that email.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for reading all of that. But yeah, I didn't want there to be any contention that I was doing my whole thing of rewriting the words. It's this one I was going to do word for word the way that it came in. So there are a number of things to address in here. And so, first of all, I don't know that this was the complete amount of the measurements that he took. He sent the MDAT data that I can look up in Room EQ Wizard, but he only included these 2 measurements in there. So we're only getting this snapshot of 1 microphone location. And much of what I'm discussing when it comes to this setting the independent, phase relationship or the delays between the 2 subwoofers has to do with we don't care about just 1 microphone location. We care about a 3-seater couch at the minimum type of thing. So we're dealing with some limited data that was sent to us. I'm not saying that this was actually all that he measured. I'm just saying this is all I'm privy to in terms of what was included in the email. So in that sense, this is an instance of we have this one example, and then we are using that to generalize that the advice that was given does not apply, rather than going the other way around and saying, well, the general advice normally applies, but here's an exception that I found. It's it's that kind of reverse logic that just on a fundamental level, the argument is kind of difficult to take there, where we're saying, okay, here's the one example, maybe this is the exception that proves the rule, and we don't really know given the limited data set that we got here. But let's put kind of all of that aside, because I don't want to be pedantic about an argument in that way. I want to really dig into some of the nitty-gritty that he talked about, because this is a very understandable little bit of misunderstanding of the way that Odyssey is coming at things. because a couple of the things that he mentioned here, right? So first of all, it does not do the subwoofer equalization at the time that it sets the distances and levels. Those are like two different calculations at two different times in the Odyssey process. It pings subwoofer number 1. If you've set it up as dual independent subwoofers, right? Sub EQ HT. It pings subwoofer number 1, and just based off of the little womp 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 sound that comes out of solely subwoofer number 1, it just uses timing exactly like it does for all of the other speakers to calculate the distance that it thinks subwoofer number 1 is away from microphone position number 1. So it's purely based on timing. And then it sets the level based on that as well. Then it separately does the same thing for subwoofer number 2. Just pings it, and based on time sets the delay and sets the level for subwoofer number 2. It doesn't equalize either sub at that point. It is not equalizing them independently or at that same moment when it's setting the distances and levels. Later on, there is a subwoofer sweep. It's a very fast sweep because it's the Odyssey test tones, but there's a subwoofer sweep that plays with, you only hear it one time. Because it's both subwoofers playing together at that point, and that's when it does the equalization of the subwoofers. Now, it is also individually equalizing each of your speakers according to its target curve. The criticism against Odyssey for a long, long time is that it does not combine the speaker and subwoofer output and adjust anything to do with the phase or the equalization for the speakers and subwoofers combined. It equalizes the two subwoofers playing together after having set individual distances and levels for sub 1 and sub 2, but it equalizes them together, but it just equalizes one subwoofer output signal according to a target curve, and then it equalizes each of your speakers individually according to a target curve. And that's the reason you can manually change the crossover later on without anything of the speaker equalization. That's not going to change at all because those were all equalized individually according to a target curve. And below the crossover range is not really going to change at all because the subwoofers were equalized just according to a target curve. But where the subwoofers and the speakers cross over, oh, that can make a difference. And that's been a criticism of Odyssey for a long, long time. That is the very thing that Dirac Live bass control was designed to fix. The notion that you have more than just your subwoofers producing bass, particularly at that crossover region. So if we're going to actually get a nice linear equalization, we have to know what is the phase relationship between the speakers and the subwoofers, because those things are going to be playing common frequencies in that crossover region. And if all we did was set the distances based on timing, and we equalize them separately according to individual target curves, once they play together, we have no guarantee that that isn't going to create a big old hump in the crossover or a big old dip in the crossover. And that's exactly what happened in that first red target curve. It's like that is a full range sweep that he's playing in Room EQ Wizard, speakers and subwoofers combined. And right in that crossover region, centered at 100 hertz where he sent it, he ended up with a null in there. Now, how did he fix that? He manually changed not the crossover frequency, but he manually changed both distances, both subwoofers, and by a very similar amount, right? One of them he increased by 4 feet, the other one he increased by 5 feet. But he didn't increase one of them by 10 feet and the other one not at all, right? He increased both distances by a pretty darn similar amount, which is very similar to having one Y-split subwoofer output that you then increased the distance of that one subwoofer output that is Y-splitting and feeding both subwoofers, because he increased that distance/delay setting almost equally for both subs. That helped the phase relationship between the two subs and the speakers. It didn't do much to change, well, what's happening below the crossover frequency for the subs, because the relative distances of the two subs to each other only changed by 1 foot, right? The way that he did his change. So he has found a scenario that wasn't really what I was talking about. Now, it's not an invaluable scenario that he found, because you're absolutely right. This has been a long-standing problem with Odyssey, that it doesn't do the equalization of the speakers plus subwoofers together. It has never done that. It sets individual target curve EQs for each speaker all by itself and the two subwoofers playing together, but just the two subwoofers. It has never bothered to calculate and play back what happens when you combine those things. And that's been a long-standing criticism.
Well, one thing we're proving, if nothing else, is they need to do that. They need to treat the whole thing as a system.
That's what Dirac Live bass control was invented to fix. That's what the multi-sub optimizer can do that for you too, if you input your front, left, and right speakers as, a third bass producing thing. So what was I talking about with the whole, why don't we just let sub EQ have two independent subwoofer settings, individually set distances and levels, EQ them together, and then if you wind up with some sort of null, go back in and manually change the independent distances yourself? Why have I been recommending all along that doesn't work? Well, here's the issue with only having had this one microphone measurement data sent to us. Like I say, I'm not saying that's all he actually measured or that this was even the case, but if we saw 3 or more seats, we might discover that the original thing that Odyssey did, right? The 2 separate distance settings that it set automatically, maybe that looks okay, the response at your primary seat. But maybe the seat to the left, maybe the seat to the right, even if they look okay, maybe they look significantly different. Like they're not so bad that it's really a gigantic problem, but it's that you have a small dip at one frequency in the primary seat that the EQ can fix just fine, but that very same frequency is actually a small hump in the seat to the left, and then it's actually like really flat in the seat to the right. What we have there is non-uniformity. We don't have a gigantic problem in any of the seats, but how do you actually apply an equalization curve to a scenario like that is non-uniform from seat to seat to seat, where it actually makes every seat better? If it's non-uniform, we can make one seat better, but at the expense of making another seat worse, right? If we raise that little bit of a dip in the center seat, well, we're going to make the hump in the left seat even worse, and we're going to add a little bit of a hump to the right seat that wasn't there before. What we need is uniformity. So in this scenario, what I'm saying is you have these 2 subwoofers, and before you get to Odyssey, before you get to anything, we adjust the phase relationship between just the 2 subwoofers to try and achieve as close to uniformity across at least a 3-seater couch as we can get to. Because if we have uniformity, now when Odyssey attempts to equalize the single subwoofer output, the single output signal that is being fed to both subwoofers as essentially a mono signal, it can recognize as you move the microphone position from seat to seat to seat that, hey, I'm getting very similar response in all of these seats. I'm not getting a hump at a certain frequency at one seat that is at that very same frequency a dip in a different seat. And then how do I equalize that? It's like, no, I'm getting humps and dips, and it's the same humps and dips at the same frequencies at all 3 of these seats. I can go ahead and equalize that according to a target curve now. But you can't alter that after the fact, that phase relationship. Like, let's say what happens is you let it do its thing, right? And it sets the 2 separate distances and delays just via timing, the way that it does. And then based on just that timing, you afterwards measure seat to seat to seat and go, hey, these aren't uniform. I'm not getting uniform seat to seat to seat based on just a pure timing ping, the way that Odyssey set its distances. But I can manually change that. And maybe the way I manually change that is I change the distance of subwoofer number 1 relative to subwoofer number 2, rather than delaying both of them by, one of them by 4 feet, one of them by 5 feet. To get good uniformity, I delay subwoofer number 1 by 10 feet, and I don't change sub number 2 at all, or I actually decrease its distance by 2 feet or whatever. Like, I put in this bigger difference, right? And that, when I measure it, gives me much better uniformity, but now the equalization that Odyssey applied originally was based on the distances that it gave. Now that you've changed that relative relationship between the 2 subs, like, there's no way to input that into Odyssey and have it EQ just the subwoofers again, because once you run Odyssey for a second time, it's going to put the distances back to where it did the first time, and you're back to that same problem. That's why I'm saying you manually get the phase relationship between the two subs correct so that you have uniformity. Now Odyssey can go to its target curve and equalize those very effectively across your three-seater couch. That still might result in this very same kind of at the crossover frequency dip that you're seeing afterwards in Room EQ Wizard. That is a different problem. That is, hey, I got my two subwoofers to be nice and uniform and equalized nicely according to my target curve, just the two subs. I achieved that. But now I actually play it together with my speakers, and it turns out I have this big old dip at the crossover region. What do I do about that? Well, now you're adjusting the phase relationship between the two subwoofers together as a unit and the speakers, exactly like you did. That's why I'm saying what you did is very similar to, I told it I only have one sub, and I changed the distance setting manually of that one subwoofer output so that relative to the speakers, I have a different phase relationship than what Odyssey set automatically, which again, it did strictly by timing pings. So this is almost like doing it again, but this one you can do manually in Odyssey after the fact because you have nicely equalized subs all by themselves. You have nicely equalized speakers all by themselves. The only problem is when they play together and cross over, I just need to change the phase relationship between the speakers and the subs so that I don't end up with this dip or hump right in that crossover region. That you can do without having changed the equalization on either of them. It wasn't ever supposed to look like that. It's a calculation error that came about by only setting the relative distances based on timing and nothing else, never having measured the speakers and subs together. It didn't do that. It didn't equalize based on the full thing all played together the way Dirac Live Bass Control can. So that's where Dirac Live Bass Control in an automated way is superior to Odyssey, no ifs, ands, or buts.
How about that? I'm so surprised that there's this very specific deficiency of Odyssey and they haven't done anything about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was a whole lot of talking from me. I don't know how perfectly clearly that came across, but it's like, yeah, you're not the least bit wrong about the scenario you described. It's just what you described is actually a different thing than I was talking about. Similar concepts because we're talking about relative phase between two bass producing things. But yeah, one of them you can fix after the fact in Odyssey, which is the relative phase between the subwoofers playing together and any given speaker. But the relative phase of the subs with each other, you can't change that after the fact without it messing up the equalization that Odyssey applied just to the subwoofers. That's the missing communication that set the whole thing off.
Frustrating to have to learn to tweak something that's supposed to be automatic. That's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Hey, shall we move on to Henry?
We should.
All right. Henry has questions. Henry had a pleasant surprise when he visited a store that is local to him in New York City called Book Off. He'd heard they also sell Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays, and he was expecting to find a small section to peruse, but it turns out they've got an enormous section, and he was able to find a bunch of his favorite movies that have only ever come out on 1080p Blu-ray, so he snapped them up. How about that? He's using a JVC NP5 projector on a 120-inch screen, so he was a little bit worried that regular old 1080p Blu-rays might not look that great to him anymore since he's gotten used to Ultra HD Blu-rays. But he was, once again, pleasantly surprised. So he wants to know, what exactly is he seeing at this point? He's assuming his Panasonic UB9000 Ultra HD Blu-ray player is upscaling the 1080p images, but is his JVC projector also doing some of the work here? If he were to view these discs on a native 1080p display, would they still look as good? Or is the resolution now somewhere in between native 1080p and native 4K? Also, are 1080p Blu-ray discs superior to 4K streaming? Boy, there's a lot to go on there. The first thought that comes to my mind is that very good 1080p, especially if it's very high bitrate, it is very hard to see the difference between that and average 4K with not enough bitrate for that 4K.
Yeah. Yeah, because when we're talking, resolution really is just describing the number of pixels. How many pixels are there in this image? But it doesn't describe the quality of those pixels. It's just described the number. Yeah. Resolution is just the number. So if you have, 4 times as many pixels, but they're filled with kind of smudged because of data compression information, then that isn't going to look as sharp or as clear as a smaller number of pixels, but every single pixel is like razor tack, exactly, the perfect color that it's supposed to be, rather than kind of, fudged and smudged together because of data compression. So it's like a 1080p Blu-ray disc can, in some cases, look better than a 4K stream. That's purely down to data compression. But sometimes the 4K stream looks superior to the 1080p Blu-ray because of something like HDR, or because it was actually a different master that was used. Exactly. It was remastered video, and that can make a gigantic difference despite the data compression that's on there. So it's not like there's a true one-size-fits-all when it comes to 1080p Blu-ray versus 4K streaming. It's pretty much a case-by-case basis. But yeah, it's certainly possible for a 4K stream to be, so heavily data compressed that, the actual number of pixels is greater, but the amount of information in those pixels is lower than what's in the 1080p Blu-ray. That could certainly be the case. But yeah, what's going on here? At some point, because you are using a display that natively has Ultra HD, or actually in your case, Cinema 4K pixels, it is filling every pixel of your display with some kind of information. At some point, something is scaling everything that you see on your MP5 projector to a 4K resolution image. Something has to do that scaling. Now, the JVC projector is perfectly capable of doing it itself and doing a pretty darn good job of it. You can input 480 resolution from a regular DVD, and your JVC is going to upscale that to 4K resolution and honestly do it pretty darn well. Your Panasonic UB9000 Ultra HD Blu-ray player is going to claim that it has an even better scaler inside of it. So if you choose in its output settings to have the player always output 4K resolution, because it's always connected to your 4K display, at that point the JVC is just showing what the UB9000 fed it and not really doing much of anything itself, other than if you adjusted your contrast and brightness settings, your color settings, your sharpness settings, whatever like that, then the JVC is doing something on that front. But resolution wise, it's not doing anything. However, you can set your Panasonic to just output whatever the native resolution of the disc you're playing, right? Because it can play Ultra HD Blu-rays, it can play 1080p Blu-rays, it can play DVDs. So you can set it to just output the native resolution of the disc, at which point the JVC is doing all of the upscaling. And I think they do a very equal job, those two devices.
Probably. In my brain, I always think that a display itself is probably better at knowing how to make things look the best on that display.
Not necessarily.
That's just what my assumption is.
Yeah, with an inexpensive display with a very cheap scaler, it might be doing a very rough job of making up those extra pixels that weren't there in the original signal. There can definitely be superior processing of that, but the JVC is no slouch of an upscaler. No, of course not.
So all of this is good.
I highly doubt that you'd honestly be able to see a difference, whether it's the UB9000 doing the upscaling or the JVC doing the upscaling. It's going to be exceedingly similar.
So yeah, I mean the big thing here, I just can't say enough, is bit rate. I mean, granted, the quality of the mastering is super important, but assuming that was done well, bitrate is everything, because I've seen low bitrate 4K and it's really frustrating. And then you see a Blu-ray disc, just a regular Blu-ray disc that used all that bitrate. Was it 50 megabits per second was the max on a Blu-ray?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 50 megabits per second for 1080p is barely any compression at all, it feels like.
It's still quite a bit. You get the raw file and it's terabytes.
That's right. It doesn't feel like that much. When you look at it, it looks beautiful. But what's a typical streaming bit rate for 4K on the various streaming services? It's a lot less than that.
A lot of them are like, much. A lot of them are like 8. The good ones are maybe 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're really not, you're not really seeing real 4K most of the time.
But
anyway,
they're using different compression codecs. You're relying on greater brute processing power to recalculate back after the compression, but it is lossy. What goes in is not exactly what comes back out. So yeah, there's a lot of factors going on there.
Bitrate is everything. So you could definitely enjoy 1080p. I remember finding out our local sort of boutique fancy pants theater This was years ago. I don't know if they've upgraded. I'll have to ask a friend of mine that works there. I was surprised to find that I had watched things there in 1080p. I was like, wow, that looks really good. That's really just 1080p. I can believe it because it's a theater projection on a sizable screen. So it can be great. How about David's question?
Let's do it.
David is stationed in Japan. David has all moved into his off-base, quote unquote, American style house in Japan now. I think I remember talking about this before. Did we talk to David before? Yeah. He decided to just stick with his little Focal Little Bird speakers as wall-mounted surrounds in his compact but dedicated home theater room. That sounds good. And in addition to the KEF LS50 pair that he already picked up from one of Japan's many electronics recycling depots, he also got a pair of LS50 Anniversary Edition speakers, since he was never able to find a single LS50 available to buy as a center. The extra LS50 is compact and easy to store, so he's got a spare now if he ever needs it.
Yep.
So,
good.
We've said many times in the past that our brains are very good at reconciling the location of the actor's lips on screen with the sound actually coming from a center speaker that is physically below the screen. And he always has agreed with that until now. Is it simply due to the small size of the room and sitting only 6 feet away from the TV? With a single KEF LS50 directly below the TV as a center speaker, it's been easy to tell that the sound is not coming from the screen itself. Interestingly, if he switches over to using an up mixer instead of a straight 5.1 decoded listening mode, even though he's only using 5 actual speakers, the effect is not as pronounced. But he can still tell the sound is coming from the KEF speaker, not the TV screen. So, anything that can be done about that? Scooch farther away. It's the angle, right? Like, when you're that close, being just below the TV is a much bigger angle than when you're farther away. So, that's got to be the main thing happening there.
Yeah, some of it can be. I don't know exactly how much tilt he has applied to that center speaker to have it aimed directly at his face or not. Occasionally having it aimed like right at your face is actually more problematic, because when you get the like perfectly on axis sound, that is the easiest for us to tell that that is exactly where it came from. Whereas if you're actually hearing slightly off axis sound, which might mean tilting the center speaker less or tilting it more, right? So having it's that the perfectly on axis tweeter response is going above your head or below, but not straight at your face. That can, definitely help. It is still an illusion. You're seeing if you don't have the image on screen and you're not seeing the lips move, you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely coming from there. But then you start seeing the lips move and that illusion is created where your brain puts them together. But if you have that very direct, perfectly bang on axis sound coming right at your face from that close, then it's pretty hard, even with that visual auditory illusion, to be like, oh no, it's coming from higher up. I'm not completely opposed in this setup, since you literally already have the other LS50 on hand, of putting it above the screen. Now, typically that doesn't work that great because our ears stereo locate side to side, not up and down, unless you turn yourself horizontally.
Which I do when I watch TV.
In a scenario like this, like kind of what's happening when you're applying those up mixers and it's doing the Dolby Atmos height virtualization, is that it is just reproducing those same vocal sounds from other parts of the room that are off axis to your ears, and that helps mend that illusion where it's not all direct on axis sound. So similarly, if you do have a center speaker physically above the screen and one below the screen, and you don't tilt them really, you just kind of have them both firing straight forward, you're ending up getting off axis sound from both that your brain puzzles together into being like, well, I think it was actually coming from where I'm seeing the lips move. So yeah, given that you've already got that, I'm not opposed in this instance to you trying that, have it above the screen as well as below the screen. Yeah.
Once again, we have another free thing you can try. He's got to have
in this
some
case,
method of hanging it up there.
Could be a bonus that worked. The other thing though would be to just play with the tilt of the one center that you already have. Because if you've done the thing where you've aimed it straight at your face, I'm not surprised that this is the outcome.
Right. He previously asked about his Denon disc player, which was working fine via digital coax, but since he still owns a few multi-channel DVD audio discs, he was a little disappointed that the HDMI connection didn't seem to function. Rob ended up being right, that setting his Denon AV receiver's HDMI signal format to standard instead of enhanced got the Denon disc player working via HDMI. Boom. Way to go, Rob. But unfortunately, there does not seem to be any way to set that HDMI signal format on an input by input basis, which Rob has said was something that could be done. Oh, well. It's a much bigger problem for all of his other source devices to have the HDMI signal format set to standard, since that won't allow through 4K or HDR. So he figures he'll just live with using the digital coax connection from the Denon disc player and just be fine using 2-channel only from that device. But is there any other HDMI fix that could work?
So, yeah, I mean, I was double checking on my current Denon receivers, and it used to be the case where, okay, so you choose your input, right? You got the DVD input, the CD input, the cable satellite input. You choose your input, and then you go into that 4K versus 8K HDMI signal format setting, and you change it. And it used to remember it on an input by input basis, at least on some of the older models. But you're absolutely right. I've got a current A1H. It doesn't seem to do that anymore. It seems to be a global setting, which is very disappointing. Much less useful that way. So unfortunately, I don't have any fix for this scenario that isn't going to involve buying something else. Because at this point, what you need is something that, honestly, I think it's less the HDMI format than it is the copy protection version, because you've got a Denon disc player that's using the older copy protection version, and that 4K versus 8K goes along with the HDCP content protection version that comes with it. And you've got a player that's like, hey, I'm used to the old standard, I'm not used to the new standard, and the AV receiver's like, I'm looking for the new standard, you're giving me the old standard, so you don't get to send your signal through me anymore. So there are just little external devices where you can take like a HDCP 1.4 older standard and just convert it through a little third-party box that sits outside of it to the new HDCP 2.2 or 2.3 standard. So that's the sort of thing you would look for. They don't need to cost an arm and a leg, but at this point, you need a little external device that's going to update the HDCP copy protection spec, that came out of the player before it gets to the AV receiver.
Let's move on to his next question. So the big fly in the ointment right now is that his new to him KEF LS50 speakers seem to be really, really limited in their output capabilities. He looked up the specs and they're supposed to be 8 ohms nominal with 85 decibel sensitivity and 100 watts sustained power handling with just a tiny bit of headroom to max out at 106 decibels of output at a 1 meter distance. He's only 6 feet away from them, so strictly speaking, maybe they can't deliver full 105 decibel cinema reference volume peaks, but they ought to be able to get pretty darn loud, right? You'd think 6 feet away from an LS50 could blast your face pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
But because he is finding that as soon as they're outputting just 80 to 85 decibels at his seat, they are audibly distorting. That's odd. And if he tries to go past 85 decibels at his seat, they sound like they are straight up bottoming out. He has run Odyssey and has them crossed over to his subs at 80 hertz, as recommended by KEF themselves. He was fairly pleased with them at first, when keeping the volume to 80 dB or lower, because they seem to do a slightly better job than his much larger RBH speakers at letting him hear the separation between instruments and creating a razor sharp image. But sometimes he likes to play his music loud, not like over 100 decibels, but sometimes over 90. And the KEF LS50s seem to be utterly incapable of that, even just 6 feet away. That does seem strange. He's read that they need, quote, good amplification and that they're not exactly the easiest speakers to drive. But is it honestly the case that his Denon X3500H receiver cannot power just a pair of them with subwoofer handling all of the bass below 80 hertz from only 6 feet away in a small enclosed room? He's also seen some people complain that the LS50s can't get as loud as they were expecting or hoping, but this seems unreasonably limited. Something's got to be wrong, right? Do we have any ideas? First of all, is something just dramatically wrong, or does this happen? Is there a thing with these LS50s?
Right. Yeah, this ain't right, because, if you're starting to hear distortion at like 80 to 85 dB from 6 feet away, that's 1 watt. All right, that's 1 watt of power at that point. Maybe not even 1 watt of power at that point. There is no way they should be distorting at 85 dB at your seat from 6 feet away, right? Maybe at that point you're talking 2 watts of power that's necessary to get them to 85 dB from 6 feet away. Maybe 2 watts, but there's no way there should be any distortion happening. So unfortunately, I'm thinking, hey, he did pick up that first pair from an electronics recycling place. And a lot of people, they ran these things full range in a room from a distance that's honestly beyond their true capabilities. Is it possible someone just, the worst thing somebody could have done is actually connect them to some little 10-watt tube amp and then tried to get 100 decibels out of them because that little amp is going to clip, and that could have definitely damaged the woofers. When you're playing them so quietly and remarking on the imaging, it's like you're pretty much only hearing the tweeter at that point. There's not really much else that you're hearing. And then if there's been some honest mechanical damage to the woofer, it's barely moving at such a quiet volume. But, turning it up to just 85 dB from 6 feet away, absolutely not. There should be no audible distortion coming from LS50s. Like, people have found, okay, I put it into my 20-foot by 30-foot living room. I sat 15 feet away from them, and I tried to play a whole movie, and they couldn't get as loud as I wanted. It's like, they can't. They're about 100 watts can go into these things, and they play about 85 decibels from 1 foot, from 1 meter away, with 1 watt. It's like, they're not up to that task. But that, I'm wondering if somebody tried to do that sort of thing before you became the owner of them, and they actually mechanically damaged those woofers, because that just ain't right. What you're describing just ain't right. These should be able to easily play at 100 decibels in your scenario. Really no problems at all. And yes, an X3500H can absolutely power just a pair of them, especially when they're bass managed. There's really no reason they should sound like this. So I would urge you to actually test one of your LS50s at a time. Because it's entirely possible that it's actually only one of them, right? When you're playing them in stereo, it's really hard to tell the audible distortion is actually only coming from one of them and not both of them. So I would, you got 4 of them on hand. I would test them one at a time. My suspicion is that 1 or 2 of them is actually mechanically damaged.
It's what it sounds like, right? I just can't imagine another scenario where...
There's no way. Like, if he was saying I was playing that at 100 dB sustained, even from just 6 feet away, I'd be like, maybe you can hear some distortion. That's not out of the question. They shouldn't be bottoming out. They absolutely should not be bottoming out. So
this should be a good match for his space and situation. It's very strange. So it might be damaged. They were used. How about Miguel? Miguel has questions. Miguel bought some RBH speakers a while ago. They were in a clearance section, and they had some cosmetic damage to their paint finish. So he got 3 to use as his left, center, and right at a good discount. Gotcha. He has acoustically treated his room with acoustic panels on his side walls and the ceiling. And then 3 out of the 4 corners have bass traps. The front right corner doesn't have a bass trap, though. He has measured.
Where the door is.
That's probably why it doesn't. Yeah,
that's probably why.
I couldn't put anything in the front left corner. He has measured, and his RT60 decay times are around 350 milliseconds in the treble, 400 milliseconds in the mid-range, and 600 milliseconds in the bass. That's not too bad, right?
That ain't bad at all. That's very, very reasonable. Yeah.
And he has run Odyssey and bass managed his system. With all of that as context, he has simply found himself not that excited to come into the room and listen to his RBH speakers. A little bit of that is their cosmetics. And RBH has said he can buy brand new cabinets for them for $280 each without having to buy complete speakers. Or he could just buy something completely new, of course. To that end, he decided to try out something very different. He brought in a pair of Klipsch reference R41M bookshelf speakers. On paper, these are cheaper and lesser speakers than his RBHs. And he didn't even bass manage them or run Odyssey on them when he took a quick listen. But at first blush, he thinks they sound just as good as his RBH speakers overall. And then they image better, especially in the left and right seats on the couch. He's always thought his RBH speakers sounded smeared in their vocal imaging anywhere other than the primary middle seat. He likes the way the Klipsch speakers look, but would it be too hasty to go ahead and commit to replacing his 3 RBH speakers with these Klipsch reference series speakers based off of this quick listen and first impressions? I don't think so. You like it. How would we recommend he go about AB comparing these speakers? And should he test a lot of other speakers before deciding on what to buy? He just wants to make sure he makes the right choice. We're all afraid we've done the wrong thing because the RBH speakers are supposed to be better, but he instantly likes these Klipsch reference speakers more. What are our thoughts? My first impression is you like it better. Do you like it better? Then you like it better.
Well, absolutely. That is a huge part. And then, so there's a whole thing of, you do have to know yourself as a user and a consumer a little bit, because there are people who enjoy, like genuinely enjoy, the process of optimizing whatever they bought. Like that is part of the hobby and part of the enjoyment for them. And that's great. And then there are also a whole bunch of people, I would argue probably more people, who are like, well, I like it when I don't have to tinker and work too hard. Yeah. I like to just, take a pair of speakers out of the box, put them where they make sense in my room. Yeah. And when I like the way they sound, it's like, well, maybe it's possible to make something else sound even better. But like, I didn't have to mess with these. I liked them right away. And like, that's also fine. I don't have any problem. But it depends a bit on you, right? And that's completely individual, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to that. It sounds like you've got a little of column A and a little of column B, to be honest, because you've got this kind of fear of, well, if I put the time in, could I achieve even better results? But at the same time, these were easy. Like, I took them out of the box. I didn't even do a full setup and calibration on them. Didn't even base manage them. I'm like, hey, I like these. And it's like, well, where do you fall on that spectrum? Because there is absolutely nothing wrong with going, these are affordable. I love the way they look. They were easy for me to set up, and I liked everything about them. Yeah. What's wrong with that? I think
sometimes it's weird when we like something that is supposedly lesser. You feel like, if I was a true expert, I would like and prefer the most expensive thing or the bigger thing, or, what I'm told is better. But if you like it, you like it. And the way he's speaking about this, the nagging dislike of what he has in there now is not going to go away. Yeah. And I honestly, at this point, from just what he said, I would put the Klipsch there and run the whole EQ with them. And I have a feeling he'd immediately like it better forever. Don't worry how much it costs.
I think it's pretty reasonable before you fully decide to commit to buying new speakers to do a full setup, right? Like, at least get them base managed and see how that goes, right? Because that's going to be part of the final setup. And maybe you actually discover, turns out after I base manage them, I have to fiddle with them a whole bunch more, and it ends up being just as much work as I was going to put into the RBHs. So maybe I actually kind of fall out of love with them a little bit at that point, and that's valuable knowledge. I think that's worth at least experiencing. I also do think, since you expressed this sort of fear that maybe you're not doing it right, like, I think it would be worth getting at least one more pair of speakers. Something that is, again, fairly significantly different, right? You went from a silk dome tweeter in your RBHs to a horn-loaded metal tweeter in your Klipschs with a higher efficiency. Like, try something that's a little different from those. Again, maybe you get some Polk Reserves with a ring radiator tweeter, or maybe you find something that's affordable that has a folded ribbon tweeter in it, because there's plenty of options in there now. Could even be like a Martin Logan, because those aren't crazy expensive for their motion series with the folded ribbon tweeter. But something along those lines, something that's, again, different from the two that you already have, just so that you're like, well, I didn't just compare two things only, and maybe there's a third thing out there. Now you've compared three different things, and if it's like, hey, still like I still find the Klipsch easiest. I still like them. Their looks the best. I still find them the most affordable. Then you're like, you put that fear out of your mind. And I think that's worth something, to have that fear gone out of your mind. But yeah, there ain't nothing wrong with preferring some Klipsch reference series speakers. Like, those are perfectly good speakers that work really well in a lot of scenarios. Nothing wrong if those end up being your favorite. Come down to the
tweeter that you mentioned. Like, a horn-loaded tweeter is a specific whole vibe, no pun intended. It sounds different. I kind of like them. They sound kind of crunchy crisp. I like that sort of thing. So if you like it, you like it. It's okay to go the direction you're liking. I tell you, it's a regular common theme on this podcast where people ask us questions where I like this, but am I missing something?
Absolutely.
Am I doing this right?
That actually is a reasonable fear to have, because we're talking about, I'm willing to admit that I haven't experienced and I don't know everything. And it's like, so before I go plunking down a whole bunch of money, because whatever you're buying these days is a whole bunch of money. It's like
everything
before I go plunking that down, is it like have I completely overlooked something that I really ought to not overlook? That's a very reasonable question. That's the point of having, I don't want to call myself an expert, but expert testimonial on a given subject. And I'm like, I'm here to tell you, if I do think from the pure fear perspective, it's worth listening to 3 things, not just 2. And if after that you're like, I still like these Klipsches, like you're not so far out on a ledge that it's not okay to like Klipsch reference series speakers. Like it's very okay to like those speakers.
Yeah, it's okay to like what you like. And it's not like the Klipsch or some off-brand cheapo thing. Like, those are good speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a perfectly valid like. How about a question from Jason?
I'm willing to keep going if you are, Lee.
Let's do Jason, and that might be about where I need to end out.
I mean, there is Infinite Gary at the very end and the very last question, and it's short, so we'll see.
Okay, let's see what happens after Jason. I'll read quickly. Jason appreciated our advice from last week regarding his dual subwoofer setup. Since the largest dip he was measuring was right around 75 to 80 hertz, he tried simply adjusting the crossover frequency to his speakers both up and down, but unfortunately it didn't help at all. He has a total of 6 seats in his room, but he's really only concerned about the front row. He measured all 3 of those seats, and the overall shape of the frequency response is very similar, though not literally identical. The big dip is a little higher in frequency and an even bigger dip in the 2 side seats. And then there are measurable dips at the harmonics as well. He did listen to sweeps, and that big dip is audible, not just measurable. So, we were correct that his current Velodyne subs do not have a fully variable phase, only 0 and 180 degree polarity switches. As we discussed, they simply cannot play flat down to 20 hertz. So he's pretty darn close to pulling the trigger on a subwoofer upgrade. But before he does, would getting subs with fully variable phase be able to fix that biggest dip without positioning them any differently from his current subs, and without adding any more acoustic treatments? Yeah, because of course, moving things around and adding treatments, it's kind of a pain. I understand that question. What you think, Rob?
So I mean, it's easy to spend other people's money, but I'm quite on board with you doing a subwoofer upgrade at this point. Because I mean, there is improvement to be had. There's really, that's just objectively true. There is improvement to be had here. So it's tough for me to like guarantee that with 2 subs, at least one of them having fully variable phase, that what looks like a quite distinct room cancellation at this frequency of 80 to 75 hertz, which is a very common frequency to have that. It's like, so you certainly have a better shot of filling that in with some fully variable phase, but because like this could be a more than one axial node, right? Meaning that cancellation isn't just happening from a front to back sound wave cancellation, or just a side to side cancellation, or just a up and down, or just a diagonal, but that it's actually multiple axial directions in this room that you're getting the cancellation at that frequency. This is a scenario where it might require 4 subwoofers or 3 with multi-sub optimization.
Now you're really spending his money.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to guarantee that just 2 subs where they're already placed is going to fix this. You have a much better potential shot at it being able to fix this than not having fully variable phase, because there all you can do is flip 1 to 0 and 1 to 180, and that's not going to fix it. So you flip it back, and that's as much adjustment as you could do. With the fully variable phase, there's at least a chance. And then on top of that, this is very close to that crossover region. So the possibility is what we talked about previously with, it Ryan, right? Where it's like, well, the subs, because these are, we're seeing just the subs in this measurement, right? And the subs, well, there's not much we can do. They've got this dip at 75 to 80 hertz. But is it possible that we actually set a little bit lower crossover to the front, left, and right speakers, say 60 hertz, and then we play with the phase relationship between the subs and the speakers by altering the distance setting for the subwoofers? And we're able to get a complementary kind of filling in of that crossover region from the speakers themselves playing a little bit lower and helping out the subs, kind of like adding a third subwoofer and some manual multi-sub optimization. That very much could be the scenario. So, I mean, if you're able to spend that money on a pair of new subs, like, there's absolutely nothing you can do with the Velodynes to make them play louder below 30 hertz. And you can with a pair of new subs. And if you have the fully variable phase, there's a chance that they can be improved in that 75 to 80 hertz region. And then you also play with the distance setting for the subs in mono relative to the speakers and have the speakers crossed over at, say, 60 hertz, your front speakers. It's like, I think combining all of that, you can fix this issue.
That sounds right. A lot of times I try hard not to tell people you have to buy the new thing to fix a problem, but you're probably you're gonna make a big dent in the dent on that graph. I think that's gonna make a difference. So I tell you what, Infinite Gary, I can't do a podcast without some Infinite Gary when I'm here.
Okay.
So let's hit Infinite Gary here, and then we will move on. I do know that Heather, my wife, will be home shortly, and she's doing a Zoom conference call. And so it shouldn't make a difference with the kind of bandwidth we have, but you never know. So we'll get on out here after that. Infinite Gary. Gary saw a video with Matthew Pose in which he said that a lot of typical home theater projectors can't really deliver the 108 nits on screen that the cinema version of Dolby Vision calls for, let alone the 300 plus nits of the newest DCI HDR standards. Gary was under the impression that 700 lumens coming out of a projector can be directly converted to roughly 200 nits. So yeah, that 300 nit figure might not be common, but 108 nits, what's the problem?
So, yes, a fundamental thing is a bit of the problem, which is that lumens cannot be directly converted to nits.
Right. Yeah.
Nits are an amount of light per a unit of area. In this case, the number of candela per square meters of surface area. That's what a nit is. It's candela
a unit
per square
we all
meters.
use every day.
Right. It is SI standard. Whereas, so lumens and candela are not the same thing, because lumens are like a 2-dimensional measure of light, and lumens are a 3-dimensional measure of light. It's actually like how much light is within a cone that's coming out, whereas candela are just how much is hitting a surface. But you can calculate from the lumens that are being output by your projector and the square footage of the screen that you're shining your projector onto, you can very easily calculate foot Lamberts. All that is the number of lumens that came out of your projector divided by the square footage of your screen. So you calculate the square footage of your projection screen, and 700 lumens divided by the square footage. So let's say it's a 100-inch diagonal 16:9 screen. I forget what exactly, that's like 29 square feet or something in that range, something like that. So you're just dividing one by the other. And foot Lamberts, it's a little bit fuzzy, but you can almost directly convert those to nits, again, because lumens are a 3-dimensional and a candela are a 2-dimensional, but because we're talking about how much it's hitting on a square meter or a square footage surface, you can convert those pretty darn accurately one directly to the other. So 700 lumens coming out of your projector on just a 100-inch diagonal screen, so by no means the biggest projection screen that somebody might have, that would produce 81 nits. Okay, so that's below 108 nits, certainly below 300. It's not that you can convert directly from lumens to nits. It has to be foot Lamberts converted to nits. And so that makes a big difference, because you're dividing those lumens by the square footage of your screen. If you have a 120-inch screen, again, not gigantic, but bigger than 100 inches, you need 1,347 lumens coming out of that projector. And that's real output, not spec sheet output,
right.
Actual lumen output to get that just 108 nit figure. To say on that same 100-inch screen, to get 108 nits, you'd need 936 real lumens coming out of a projector. Now, many projectors can do that. Many projectors can do the 1,347, but if you're getting to a 150-inch screen, the type of screen sizes that Matthew Pose is like the smallest that he deals with, well, all of a sudden, you're needing to get some, over 2,000 real nits coming out of your projectors. Then let alone trying to get to this new DCI standard of 300 nits on that screen. You're starting to need some 10,000 lumen projectors on some, sizable screens to do that. So that's where that confusion came from. Lumens cannot be directly converted to nits.
It's all about the units. Well, there we go. Infinite Gary. Hi, Gary.
Did not get to Saucy again this week. I was thinking
I'm
we
so
might,
sorry,
but we didn't.
But oh,
It's
goodness
perfectly
gracious.
fine.
We've been at it for a little bit. And yeah, by the way, everyone listening, Rob has labeled the next section of this show plan
Yes.
next giant email dump from Saucy. So it says giant email dump, and we don't have time at this point.
It was pretty big. Who knows? One day we might get to it. But yeah, I mean, he said it's perfectly fine if we don't on the podcast because it wasn't actually questions and it was by no means time sensitive. But yes, I feel a little bad if we keep stringing along. But at this point, you know me. If you've listened at all, I love a running gag. It is my favorite thing in comedy is a running gag. So that just becomes a running gag at some point, and then it's good again. So before we go, I got to head back up to the top here and thank our listeners of the week. If you want to make a PayPal donation, come to our website, avrant.com, click on the support AVRant cup of coffee image, and you can put in a PayPal donation if you want to. If anyone did this past week, we will find out about it next week when Tom is back, because he's the only one who sees that. But we can thank our patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. That's where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 126 patrons over there. Jack, thanks once again. He came through, delivered that Dayton Omni mic to Dan, and Dan is very happy about that. It was a nice complete package. So thank you, Jack. Thank you to Greg for offering to supply another measurement microphone that we could give away to somebody.
Mic giveaways left and right around here.
We will talk to Tom about that. We'll figure out how to do another giveaway. So thanks so much. And then, yes, for the notes of gratitude that came in just for keeping the podcast going through whatever might be happening in the world, we want to thank Brad, Brian, Eric, Ilango, Julian, Karl, Henry, Gurinder, Dan, and Jason. Thank you all so much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. And a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. You can send your questions to question@avrant.com. That is our email address, and by far the best way to reach us. So first in, first out is our method here, unless you're named Saucy. And then, that's how we do things around here. Question@avrant.com. That's the way to get in touch with us. So,
I just think we should build up a Saucy email dump forever. We could post it somewhere if anybody wants to go read it and has enough time, like, reading.
I mean, any actual questions we will do in the first in, first out order. It was only because he said, "Hey, don't worry if you don't get to these."
Well, I'll tell you what, at some point when Rob's not here and you want to do a second podcast during the week like you're doing this week, then one is just his.
That sounds about right.
We'll get to it eventually, man.
Lee, thank you so much for pinch hitting and for being here in Tom's stead.
No problem. It's fun every time, man. I enjoyed it. It didn't go too bad this time. Only minor panics, not major panics like previously.
Yeah, it wasn't like a 45-minute delay this time, although I delayed things by like 15 minutes because of stupid Windows and its updates.
Hey.
And I just wasn't going to interrupt that because fear.
There's just no way to start early enough to hit a moment. That's just how it is.
That's right. So remember, folks, even though this has been a 2.5-hour long episode already and absolutely ridiculous, and Tom is going to be very upset, there is a second episode of AV Rant this week with Joe Klusnick. We're just going to be talking about CEDIA 2025. That's all it's going to be. It's going to be a CEDIA special. So you got that to look forward to, because I think I'll release them like a day apart, just so there's a tiny little gap between
you
AV
need
Rant
some sort of
episodes
recovery after listening to my annoying self, and then
not annoying at all, but packed full of words and time. So there we go. On behalf of Tom Andrew, this has been AV Rant. My name is Rob H.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.